All right, so welcome back to episode 16 of my East Coast Fitness Podcast, and I'm your host, Mark Lewis. Once again, I do have another very special guest with me. And I mean, in terms of my values of my podcast, if you've been watching the previous episodes on my YouTube channel, I did upload a couple in Spotify, but just to give you guys a recap, I did kind of change the direction of my podcast, and now I kind of want to get more live guests on just like this. And the values of my podcast is I want to be able to bring people on who inspire, educate, and motivate others to basically be the best versions of themselves that they can be. And today I have a very successful natural bodybuilder, but he also turned his passion into fitness, into a full-time online coaching business as well. So we're going to be discussing a little bit on that. And he also recently started a podcast that I highly encourage you guys to check out. I honestly love it. It's called the Begin Business Podcast. I watched the first 2 episodes, and honestly, I'm hooked. I just kind of like there's not really too many people that are doing that out there, kind of giving the perspective of how you started and basically putting it into kind of like unfolding your journey and bringing guests on who kind of, like I do, kind of share similar interests. So I think that's really good that you're doing that, and honestly, I'm a fan of it. So yeah, I'll link everything in the description so everybody can just go check it out. But you also just recently welcomed a little girl into the world. So congratulations on that. How old is she?
It's three months. I think it was day before last, actually. Yeah, so 3 months old now. It's gone quick.
Wow, that probably takes up a lot of your time, eh?
Yeah. It's definitely changed things around a little bit. Obviously, yeah, it takes a good chunk of time. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, I don't got any little ones, so I could just imagine like what it'd be like if you're going from not having that responsibility to kind of have a little bit more responsibility. I'd imagine it would kind of get like more adjusted. There'd be a lot more things you'd have to take into consideration that you probably weren't used to, and there's things that always come up. You know what I mean? That you didn't really know, especially when you're first time doing it, right? So it's kind of
100%. It's a bit like a life kind of them life changing things, isn't it? Obviously, I think everyone says it, but yeah, it's obviously very life changing in terms of kind of priorities and how you have to manage your time and stuff like that. I think to an extent, it's probably a good thing that. I was already being a bodybuilder and running your own business and stuff. You already have to kind of manage your time pretty well anyway. So it's just kind of like an extra thing to add in there. Whereas obviously if you're not used to doing that, then I can imagine it's even more of a nightmare. But
yeah, no, for sure. So I'd like to welcome you and I'd like to thank you for coming on the podcast. And then just introduce yourself to the viewers, and that would be awesome.
Yeah, so my name's Jake Brailey. I'm from the UK, live up north, near Sheffield. Obviously, like you've said, I'm a natural bodybuilder, so I've probably been lifting in the gym since I was about 15 years old, 25 now, so it's, roughly 10 years, pretty consistently. I think I've probably only ever had like a week or 2 off, to be honest, like when I've gone on holiday and stuff since I started, at various points throughout. Obviously I now run like an online coaching business, which is called Shaped by JB. And also have a new podcast, which is based around the kind of online coaching business side of things. So it's for people who are interested in like online coaching, personal trainers want to begin like a small business within the fitness industry. And the podcast is obviously myself and then also with other guests that kind of have been there and done it themselves. So like you said, I think it's kind of an untouched area almost with like guests who have actually been there and done it. Whereas quite often, I find like a big issue in the industry and stuff at the minute is people that are good at marketing and sales, trying to put themselves across as someone who knows how to build an online coaching brand. And obviously, it's kind of what the podcast is almost a replacement for. But that's basically about me anyway.
Yeah. So in terms of like, why did you want to? What was the most interest? Like, why did you want to start the podcast, or like what interested you the most about like before we actually dive into like the podcast itself, but like what about the podcast kind of like interested you to start it? Like what was the main driving force behind actually doing it, I guess?
I don't know, it's an area that I'd quite like to move into in the future. I think it's just kind of like natural progression. I quite like to go into the space of teaching other people how to like start their own online coaching businesses. Like I'm not obviously, I don't think I'm at the point at which I can teach people who are already online coaching coaches to scale their business because, I haven't quite like scaled mine to a point which I think that's, possible for me to kind of teach to someone else. But I think I'm definitely teach someone else about how to begin, go from like being a student or to starting up their business and kind of building it to something, full time like I've done. So that's kind of where it started. And I think, that will naturally kind of come into play like over the course of the next year or so. But I kind of wanted to just have a podcast. I thought, when I always quite often think of like, you know, if I was starting out again, like what would I want? And obviously, you know, I thought the idea of having a podcast with people who have done exactly what I wanted to do, and kind of speaking openly about it. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot of people, you'll pay like hundreds of pounds, like potentially thousands of pounds for a course to like learn the stuff that we're putting on the podcast for free.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a lot of people's opinions as well. Obviously, if you're paying like a coach or someone to teach you how to start, you know, or you know, buying a course or something to teach you how to build an online coaching brand or something like that. Obviously, you're buying that from one person, whereas obviously the podcast is you know, the opinions and views and stuff of dozens and dozens of people who have, you know, all done it before. So it's kind of like you get a broad spectrum of you know advice, I guess.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that like that's kind of what made me want to start the podcast as well, is to kind of like educate people, I guess, on different topics. I found that I was kind of doing more solo podcasts. Not that I don't like doing that, but I think the biggest thing for me and the turning point for me was I wanted to be able to like. I always learn something when I have somebody on the podcast. I always like reaching out to people. I like connecting with people. Not necessarily always people who have similar interests, but I also like that slight debate thing as well. Like kind of like going back and forth with different opinions. That kind of interests me. I've always been the kind of person that likes to kind of like talk. So I think that was just natural for me to kind of, you know what if I were to start a podcast and get people on that shared similar interests as I do, and we could discuss different topics. And I think the creative part of just kind of like putting them together, editing the podcast, I also like that part of it. And that's kind of why I'm also active on YouTube. And I'm also, YouTube's pretty big for me. I also enjoy like the editing. I like thinking of the videos. I like kind of like filming the videos, and just the whole content creation part just really intrigues me. And I find that the podcast, it kind of allows me to not have that structure. Whereas like, even though I plan them out with a little bit of structure, but like a YouTube video is going to be way more structured than a podcast is, in terms of just being specific on one topic. Whereas like the podcast, it's like, I want it to be as natural as possible. So I feel that the podcast kind of allows me to connect with people and just naturally talk about a subject and just see where it goes, versus versus the YouTube, where it's just like, here's the best exercises for this, or here's my resistance band workout for. So it's just kind of like, it's just a different way to kind of incorporate my love for fitness, I guess you would say. So I can definitely relate to you there for sure. Yeah. So like the topics that we're going to discuss today, the main topic that we're going to go over is basically how to start a successful online coaching business. Not necessarily like, I think what I want to get at with that is I want to be able to kind of allow you to share your thoughts and opinions on how you did it, and then kind of go through any tips and not tips, but like advice that you would have for somebody who is looking to start an online fitness coaching business, and just kind of like what things that you have learned from doing it so far, that not necessarily mistakes, but things that mistakes that you've made, or things that you would do different if you would do it again, kind of thing. And then in terms of the other topic that I wanted to go over was just the bodybuilding side, because I am a competitor. I'm a natural bodybuilder as well, and so are you. So I just kind of like to maybe just kind of talk about some of your opinions in terms of maybe your experience competing, and kind of like what your plans are and what your goals are, and just your thoughts on just training in general, and meals and nutrition. I just kind of like talking about that kind of stuff. So those are going to be the topics for today's podcast. So in terms of the statement, I think that nowadays you get, with social media just being what it is, I think you get a lot of people who claim that they're fitness coaches. Like it's a very generic title. And I think that like I feel like you can just be a fitness coach by putting it in your Instagram bio. And it's not like, you don't really know, like you can kind of tell based on followers, I guess, is kind of a good indication. But like even nowadays with like followers, like people buy followers, there's a lot of bots out there that just like spam accounts and stuff. So it's like, it's kind of hard. So what I'm trying to get at is it's kind of hard to tell like who's a really reliable fitness coach, and like who's actually got the skills and like the knowledge to kind of do it. So like, what's your thoughts on kind of like everyone claiming to be a fitness coach, or like well, if you were looking to hire a fitness coach, like what would you be looking for in terms of like finding somebody, I guess you'd say?
So interesting. I'll go back to the first point first, because I think it's interesting that you mentioned about looking at like followers and stuff like that. And I would see how you like a good debate. I'd almost say the opposite. And I think that a lot of the issues with online coaching is a lot of people have followers and then become an online coach, for example, because they've got the following, rather than have the like, you know, be the online coach and then kind of build the following like through that, if that makes sense. So I think, you know, you don't need to have a big following or anything to be a successful online coach. I think like on my podcast, I've got a friend of mine, Lewis, who I did a podcast with, and he's, you know, he's got a tiny social media following, but he's, you know, he's a really good coach. Like he's built like a very good business and uses social media to kind of do so. But it's, do you know what I mean? It's like, I think part of the issue is that, you know, being an online coach isn't necessarily about having a big following. It's kind of like, you know, it's a job. Do you know what I mean? It's like a business on itself. But yeah, I mean, what was the question you asked again?
So like, where do I guess it's like, so then we kind of clarified that. So you don't really need a big following. And I agree with that as well. Like, I think that like I think those people are the people like you think that stand out, like when they shouldn't, I guess. It kind of like, if you were to go on someone's page and you were like, oh, well, they got like 100,000 followers or 80,000 followers or whatever. And it's like in their description, it just says online fitness coach. And it's like, oh, well, they just kind of like, I guess what I'm trying to say is they correlate the number of followers to the amount of information that they have. So it's like saying, oh, he must know a lot about, and then you look at a couple pictures and like maybe he's shredded in a couple pictures or like whatever. Or he kind of looks the way that maybe you want to look. So I think what I'm trying to say is like they correlate like the amount of followers to like their knowledge on actual training. Cause I think that
definitely. Yeah.
and
So
it's like they might have not even took a course or like, so I guess what I'm trying to say is like more from the educational side of things. It's like, do you think that it's okay? Do you think it's like okay to be a self-learner in terms of like taking the self-education route and being like, you know what, I want to be an online fitness coach, but I don't want to go to school, or I don't want to study like at a university, or I don't want to do this, or I don't want to take a course. I'm just going to be a self-learner in terms of like reading books and buying textbooks and listening to podcasts and like basically digesting free information versus the people who like go and take a full kinesiology degree and like take like a business degree or whatever and then put in. So I guess like, what's the difference in terms, like, what's your opinions on people who want to be the self-learners that want to start the coaching versus the people that go and get every single degree out there and try to start the coaching business?
I don't think there's not a right and wrong approach. I think obviously you've got to be, you know, you've got to educate yourself at the end of the day, and it depends on what you're coaching as well. I mean, you can go through like university and all that sort of stuff, and you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to help someone be able to like lose body fat, but you might be able to teach them how to, like, you know, optimize their performance for a specific sport, if that's the kind of pathway that you've taken with your dissertation and like all the, you know, stuff you've been doing with your degrees. It's like, I think it partly depends on like what you're planning on coaching, what your niche is, but it also depends on like how you learn as a person. For example, for me, like, you know, I don't learn from like reading. Like, I hate reading. You know, if I read a book, it would just go straight through one ear and out the other. So I listen to lots of podcasts. I watch a lot of videos, and that's like my way of learning. I'm very much a visual and like a kind of, you know, audio kind of like learner. So, you know, for me, for example, if I was to rinse through loads of textbooks and stuff like that, you know, that wouldn't do anything for me. Whereas I know a lot of people it would do, and that's how a lot of people do learn. So I think it is a very much an individual thing. So I think, you know, it's like a completely different subject really about whole like learning, but it's like, you know, to learn about something, you almost need to figure out what works for you. And it's a bit like with, you know, bodybuilding as well. You know, it's almost about what works for you at the end of the day. You've got to be able to enjoy learning to be able to take in the information and remember it. So I think whether you go to university or not, it almost depends on like kind of what sort of coach you want to be. Do you want to be, you know, obviously if you want to be coaching like American football, or you want to be coaching like a specific sport or something like that, then you're probably going to have to get a degree, because you're going to be working for someone else and they're going to demand you have a specific degree and stuff. Whereas, you know, if you're looking to become like a bodybuilding coach, for example, you're not going to learn how to be a bodybuilding coach at university. And I think there's even various, I think like Jordan Peters, for example, I think he's mentioned before in one of his videos or something that obviously he's gone to university. I don't know if you know who he is, Jordan Peters.
Where's he from?
He's from the UK as well. He's a very well-known kind of bodybuilding coach and stuff like that. Runs like a subscription website, which is, you know, kind of like international and stuff. But he's just someone who's done like a lot of degrees, but mentioned various times that, you know, 99% of the stuff that he uses and has learned doesn't come from that route. It's came from like the experience and stuff like that. So I think, yeah, it depends.
That's extremely important. Going back, just to kind of, sorry to cut you off, but like, I think the difference is like, not necessarily like, I think as starting out as an online coach, the experience is the hardest one to nail, because you don't really have any, it's not necessarily you don't have any experience, but I guess it's like you're the experience,
Yeah.
because you're the one who did it for yourself. So in terms of like, you're your, like, the way that I think of it is like, it's like you're your ideal target market, right? You like, you need to kind of like look the part to like what you, so in terms of like my thing is like, I focus on bodybuilding. So it's like, I want to be able to look the part and like kind of know what I'm talking about in terms of being able to help me apply that to others. So like, I always try to, that's why I'm big with trying things out and like experimenting for myself before I always like recommend it to somebody else, because I feel like if you don't know yourself, if you're like I picture myself as the ideal client for my business, right? So it's like, I don't know if you do the same in terms of depends on what your goals are, I guess, or what kind of clients you're looking for. But I think that going back to what we were talking about with like finding the ideal coach, I think that like if you're looking to be a bodybuilder, then like finding a strongman coach is probably not what you need. You know what I mean? Or if like you're into like basketball or sports, like a bodybuilding coach is not gonna help you. So like by correlation, like by like making the correlation between their following versus like what your goals are, I think the biggest thing is like being able to identify what your goals are, what you're looking to get out of coaching.
Yeah,
And
I think almost like if you were like, for example, if I was looking for a coach, in which I probably will be at the end of this year potentially. If I was looking for a coach, or if I'm looking for a coach, I'm going to look for someone. I'm not going to look. I don't care about someone's following because it's irrelevant. Like, do you know what I mean? Unless you are. Like, a lot of people do this. They'll get a coach because they've got a big following. They know that their profile will be shared on their profile, and they'll get following from.
yeah, like a
It's like
mutual like
it's obviously like it's like using a coach for their following sort of thing. But like, if I was looking for a coach to specifically get me to achieve a goal, so for example, if I wanted to like turn pro and I was looking for a coach who could get me there, I would look for someone who like specifically specializes in that like area, if
yeah
that makes sense, or has proven that they can do that. But not just that, someone that I obviously have like a respect for, someone that I like feel like I know quite well. So I would, always follow that person beforehand for a while, get to know them through their content, maybe speak to them a few times, like make sure that I know that person before I kind of just jump in with coaching for them, because it is a one-to-one thing, especially if like my sort of service is that I speak to my clients all the time. It's like if we don't get on with each other, it doesn't work.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and I
gonna
think
be
that's like that's why like, I'm quite specific about who I bring on with coaching now. Is just because like I don't want to bring on someone that I don't get along with, because neither of us will enjoy it. So I think that's like super important. It's probably like the first thing is make sure you actually like get on with that person, make sure that you kind of like agree with who they are as a person and stuff like that, and make sure that they they're like your ideals kind of match. Obviously, make sure that they're the sort of person that can actually get you to your goal. Because like, for example, if someone came to me and was like, I want to be a strongman or like a world champion powerlifter, it's like I'm not going to be able to help that person do that.
yeah
So it's whereas obviously if someone was like, I want to be like a really good natural bodybuilder, then I'll be able to help them. If someone was like, I want to lose like a drastic amount of body fat, like I'll be able to help them. But I think it's like, you've got to like kind of know that coach and know that they can kind of get you towards your goal. And I think, yeah, like you said about having done it yourself as a coach, like I personally think it's really, really important, because the
yeah
amount of experience, I think I put a post on Instagram about it the other day, that the amount of experience which like, the amount I've learned through my experience of competing and going into off seasons, and, the whole process of being a bodybuilder, like it's just like priceless. You can't put a price on experiences.
oh, yeah, it's totally hard to get it too, if like, especially if like when you're first starting. I think that's the hardest part, is trying to get that experience. Like even if you do know a lot about not coaching, but if you know a lot about like nutrition, a lot about training, it's just getting that one successful client, or having a couple like successful clients where you're able to like show people your work. I guess it's like an art project, right? It's like if you say that you're a drawer, or you're like really good at art, if you don't got any projects to show anybody, then people are never really going to believe you. Whereas like, not necessarily believe you, but it's going to be a lot harder for people to buy into, I guess. Because like with online coaching, it's like you have to believe in their service, and you have to be able to, like you said, going back to what you said, like you have to get along with them, right? So it's like it's very hard to be able to build a relationship with someone and trust somebody if you don't get along with them. So if you're like going back to like showing off the art project, it's like you're doing client transformations. It's like that's your physical project, that's your physical business, is taking someone's body and making it your own, or like giving them the programming, the nutrition, and then allowing them to go to work with whatever you give them, right? And then being able to like obviously check in and discuss like what's working and what isn't working. And then I think that's like the biggest thing. But like I think that totally, like I think the biggest thing is just finding the right coach. someone that you like get along with and someone that definitely aligns to your goals. Because if you're working for somebody like as a coach, if I'm not interested in what they're trying to achieve, then I'm going to be, as a coach, I'm going to be less likely to want to like give it my all with them, because it's like, you shouldn't be working with me. And then you should just tell them up front that like, I'm not the right coach for you, instead of just like saying you're another number in my coaching program. And you know what I mean? Just trying to add to the roster when instead I think it's more important to build like quality and have quality clients versus quantity.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Especially when you're like, don't get me wrong, like when you're starting off, like everyone does it when you're starting off. And if you want to begin like an online coaching business, you're going to have to take on people that you don't necessarily want to work with. It's like, it's like anything, like with personal training, like online coaches, like ask any online coach and they will, when they start off, they would have taken on people that they don't particularly want to work with, just because you need the income, you need to, if you can help them, then fair enough. But I think like later on down the line, once you've got that like kind of foundation of your business sorted, then yeah, you need to look at like, who do you want to work with, and like very specific, kind of be, I think it's almost worth dropping a little bit of income to dial that in and actually make sure that because all it takes, you can have like 40 clients, and all it takes is that one client who like just ruins your day every single day because you just don't get on with them. And it's, it's going to turn that thing that you love doing every day to like something that you wake up like dreading. You're like, oh no. So it's like, it's obviously their goals and stuff like that. I think generally as a coach, I think like, like I don't really mind what the goal is if I can help them do it. Obviously, I don't mind. I like any sort of goal, whether it be like to build muscle, to lose fat, to get stronger. Like, I think it's almost more the whole like kind of like personality of the person, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Like for me as a coach, like I'm not like a someone who's gonna sit there and like pat someone on the back every single day for like doing something. So it's like, I will like when I say, well done, obviously they've obviously done something very, very impressive, if that makes sense. But I know like a lot of coaches, that there's a lot of coaches who are very much like, they want to kind of like babysit their clients and pat them on the back, and that's fine. But it's like obviously, depending on what sort of person you are, it depends on what sort of coach you want. So it's like for me, for example, if I was going to get a coach, I would want someone who was just going to tell me what to do and then let me get on with it, because it would piss me off if someone was just trying to like pat me on the back and stuff all the time, because it's really not the sort of person I am. And that's kind of like what I'm like with my coaching as well. Like I want people that will, get on with it and do what, they don't have to be kind of followed up all the time and be like kind of pestered. Do you know what I mean? It's like I work with people who are quite serious about what they do.
I think another mistake that comes from like the coach itself is just not being able to give honest feedback, like for the coach. Cause I think that a lot of times it's like, it's so easy to tell them that they're doing a good job, but like when they're not doing a good job, it's like, you don't want to tell them. It's like, it's hard to find the balance between, depending on your personality and what kind of coach you are. And like, I guess like, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's hard to tell somebody that they need to smarten up. And it's like, because it's affecting your business, it's affecting the client that you're working with. And it's like, you could give them the best program in the world, but if they're not following it, they're not adhering to it, then at the end of the day, it's not going to be effective. You know what I mean? And it's like, it doesn't look bad on you, but like from a client perspective. So it's like, I think that like, for example, if they're cheating on their nutrition and they're not eating the calories that they say they are, and they're overeating, and then you're getting all confused to like why your plan isn't working, like that you gave them, and they're saying, oh no, I swear, like I'm following everything to a T. But it's just like, I think that like being able to like do constructive criticism, but like being able to know like to when to draw the line, because going back to what you said, like if you praise them for everything that they do all the time, then it's kind of hard to determine like what's actually something good that they did versus something bad that they did, because they're just so used to getting, I'm going to do this, and he's just going to say good job. So then it becomes, from an accountability standpoint, it becomes easier for the client itself to have that like dishonest relationship.
Yeah, because I can work at like 70% of my capacity, and I'm still going to get told well done. So it's like, why work any harder? Do you know what I mean? Whereas if you're making people push to that, and it depends who the person is again, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? Not everyone wants to work at 100% all the time, because they don't need to achieve their goal. So it's like, as a coach, it's like knowing what client is kind of like where as well. Because I work with some corporate clients and that as well, who don't want to be bodybuilders, they just want to like lose some weight and stuff, and they can work at 70% of their capacity for like fitness and stuff, and that's well done because they're doing other stuff. Whereas if you're like a bodybuilder and you want to compete and you're in prep and you're, even working at like 90%, like that's not good enough. You need to be at 100% like every day, I think. So it's like, yeah, I think
it can be motivating for some people and motivating for others, because I feel like sometimes some people like might want that intensity ramped up all the time, and like whereas other people are like, I don't really like, they just want to have a good relationship. They want to make sure that they're doing the right exercises. So I think it depends on like, you kind of need to know the person that you're coaching and kind of know like what, and I think that's going back to what you said, I think that's extremely important to why you should build that relationship instead of just getting them and handing them a program and saying, here's your training program. I think you need to know like what fires them up, like what makes them mad, what, you know what I mean? Like you just need to get to know them a little bit as a person. So then when you're giving constructive criticism or you're giving some type of like feedback, like what they're going to respond to the best, because the more you're able to say to the person to get them to respond, the better, or the more you're able to psych them up about something. Or everybody, like personally for myself, I have down days, and like everybody has days where they just don't feel like going to the gym, or they just skip like a couple workouts. But like, I think that like being able to like find that spark to like get that person back on track. Cause like every time you start with a client right off the bat, everyone's both excited. Like you're excited on your end for starting off with a new client, and they're excited getting into the program. But like a month into the programming, it's like everything kind of gets old. It starts getting stale because it's like you need to put in the work. Like you can't expect like the coach to get you the results. So I think from like a client's perspective, it's like, oh, well, that's it. You know what I mean? But it's like at the end of the day, it's just like, honestly, it's just hard work. You know what I mean? Like you just have to be willing to be consistent, follow the plan, and like put in the work. And like that's the end result. Like you get what you do, right? Kind of thing. So
yeah, I think like going back to, I think like one of the most difficult parts of being a coach is when you get a new client is figuring out if they are. I think you get like two types of people. You get people who are obviously like ready, like coachable and ready for online coaching, because I think personal training, online coaching is very different. Like for online coaching, the person needs to be able to just like get on with it, and not have to have someone up their back all the time, because if they cheat on their diet, or if you're not necessarily like seeing them in person, so you can't like look at them straight in the face and be like, did you cheat on your diet, and see if they kind of like look away and stuff. Do you know what I mean? So it's like you've got to be someone for online coaching who is almost pretty serious. Do you know what I mean? You can't be someone who's just like
whatever.
You've got to be relatively serious to be able to kind of like for it to be like something for you. Whereas obviously like personal training, I think if that's almost like the level below. So it's like if you're someone who's like maybe struggling with that motivation and maybe cheating on the diet all the time, and maybe just kind of like a bit like meh, then probably go for personal trainer, just because they can kick you up the ass, and obviously every couple of days,
versus like having to like they're going to make you do it because you're there with them, versus like telling someone to do something, because if you tell someone to do something, they might be less likely to do it, right? Whereas if you're in the gym with them and you're setting up the exercise for them, then like you just tell, like they're going to have to do it, kind of thing, right? So there's definitely a huge difference from like who's interested in online coaching, and I think that everybody doesn't know not necessarily know the difference, but I think that like it's just kind of like something new, online coaching, I guess. I mean, it's kind of been around for a little bit, but like personal training is kind of different than online coaching, I think, personally.
It's completely different. Yeah, it's a completely different thing, like altogether. So I started my online coaching business when I was at university. So I kind of, if you go on to like the first episode of my podcast, you can kind of listen to the whole like kind of story of it. But essentially I started when I was at university. So I went to university with the intention of starting up an online coaching business. So I did that in the first year, I think it was. And then kind of midway through the second year, I kind of like went live with it all, started taking on clients, and then by the kind of same time that, well, I think like 6 months later, pretty much, it was at a point which it was getting in the way of my degree in my university. So it was kind of, and I had some opportunities come up to go over to LA and stuff for several months. So I basically just left uni and just pursued that. So yeah, that's pretty much it's kind of a bit mad, really. But
university when you went, I listened to the first episode of your podcast, but just kind of for like the viewers. what were you studying at the time in university?
So I was doing like a fitness management degree, which is essentially like it was very much, it was a fitness management and personal training degree. So it was kind of, kind of like my area. And they kind of, I don't know, if have you been to university?
Yes, I took a business degree. I actually went for accounting is what I originally went for. And then I
Okay.
took a course. It's a CanFit personal training course.
Yeah.
So I kind of, but that was more in terms of like the personal training in terms of like working with clients in the gym. And
Yeah.
that's kind of where I stumbled. I was like, I went into that just to get the knowledge, because I knew that when I went into that, I wanted to do online training just because I like that kind of, I like the
Right.
approach to, I wanted to work with people who are a little bit more serious in terms of that. So when I went in to take the personal training certificate, I knew that I was just there for the knowledge, and then I was going to take it. And someone who has a business background, like I always wanted to have a business for myself. I went to the business, like took a business degree, worked in accounting for a little bit, and realized that like I hate working for somebody else.
Yeah.
Kind of always wanted to start my own business and kind of be my own boss. So I just kind of fused the two in together and just kind of said, you know what, I think it would be awesome to have a personal training business. And I would love to like work with people and just like being able to help people reach their goals. I think that was the biggest turning point for me, was just basically being able to combine fitness with like business and being able to like manage my own time and like work my own schedule and like make my own income. I think it was the biggest thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you found the same, but basically with my degree, it was fitness management and personal training. Basically, it was sold off as, when you start off, they make it seem like something it's not. So I was very much for, it'll be an interesting degree. I'll learn a lot from it, and it's very much like you very much learn about like the education side behind, like being a personal trainer and like the human body and obviously, don't get me wrong, there was parts of that to it. And because there was meant to be parts of like building a business in it as well. I thought obviously that would be very interesting. That was a big part of the degree. But then when it started, it was not what it seemed, and it was very, very like
I think it was an
dry.
old
It
marketed
was,
kind of.
yeah, it was very much like it was basically just like rubbish. So I after the first year, I was just very much like this, as the quicker I can leave this degree, the better, really, just because I felt like I was just wasting my time. And I was learning more outside of my degree than I was like within the classes. That makes sense. So if I spent like an hour in a lecture, I'll be learning less valuable information in that lecture than I would if I was at home listening to a podcast or something like that. So I ended up kind of like obviously pushing hard with my like online coaching business. I was spending like every minute I wasn't doing uni work or in the gym, like building my coaching business and stuff. And then I spent 2017, which is like my kind of like first and beginning of the second year at university. I like kind of spent it competing, and I did like a lot of shows. I did like really well. And then I essentially like launched my online coaching platform. Then had like a because I launched it after my year of competing, so I automatically had quite a few people that were kind of interested in it as well.
Yeah, it was kind of like, do you feel like your bodybuilding kind of like launched your fitness coaching business in terms of like helping you kind of get people that are interested in it? Or like where did you kind of like, in terms of like, go back up a little bit. So in terms of like your when you're kind of thinking about your online coaching business, I guess like what were you thinking your target market was? Were you just kind of like opening the doors to people who were like working office jobs, or was it kind of like that 20-year-old who kind of works out to be a bodybuilder? Like what was kind of like your target market in terms of like, did you have something in mind, or were you just kind of like, you know what, I kind of not necessarily hope that I get clients, or was it an issue, or wasn't it? I guess is kind of what I'm trying to.
No, like
Yeah.
when I like, because when I first started, I didn't really know much about like, there wasn't anything to look at about starting, online coaching wasn't really a big thing back then. This was like a few years back, do you know what I mean? It was kind of a relatively new thing. So I just went into it thinking, I saw that it was a thing, and I saw that people were obviously doing it. I saw that a lot of people were doing it extremely badly, and I was like, oh, I could do better than that. And yeah, I knew that obviously being able to kind of like compete and show what I'm capable of would automatically like build credibility.
Yeah.
So it's like, I wanted to do it anyway. It was something that I wanted to do. And then it all kind of fell into place. It all kind of like worked together. But yeah, it definitely helped, especially because I did quite well that year. Like I ended up winning, like one of the last shows I ended up winning was like the Arnold Classic in Europe, which was like at the time it was like the biggest like amateur show you could do as like a junior sort of thing. And I ended up winning that, which was like obviously quite a big thing. So it was kind of after that, like, you know, it kind of gave me the confidence, I think, to say like, okay, I obviously know what I'm doing. So, you know, I was a natural competing in the untested federation, ended up winning against like 60 competitors. So it's kind of like, I think like that itself obviously was quite like a big like turning point for me. It's like I then went home and obviously set up the coaching business, kind of went live with it. And I think that if I didn't like do well that year, I probably wouldn't have had the initial clients coming in straight away. But again, yeah, so it's yeah, it was like a big thing for me. But obviously, then following from that, I mean, you know, I went into kind of like an off season and stuff like that, and then it's kind of I looked a little bit more into the business side of things and how it actually works with bringing in clients and all that sort of thing. So I think yeah, it's like it definitely helps, but again, because my target audience is like you said, it's kind of like people like me, so it's people that are like that kind of want to achieve what I've achieved, and I guess it's with most people. I mean, if you're coaching people, quite often it's people that want to achieve what you've achieved. So it's like, yeah, I find like obviously, you know, there's a lot of people that will kind of like, oh, I would love to do that. I would love to like travel abroad and compete and do really well and stuff. And that's kind of, yeah.
So did you have to do a lot of did you have to do a lot of marketing for that, or was it kind of just people reaching out to you because they seen your success? Like, was there a lot of, did you put a lot of ads out, or was it kind of like paid ads, or was it more just people being like, oh, they noticed you doing a like good for yourself kind of thing, and then we're kind of like interested and like kind of signed up like kind of marketed, like were you kind of, did you have to do a lot of ads and promotion for that, kind of getting it going, or was
like that whole year I was getting people all year like on Instagram, on Snapchat and stuff like that, because I was documenting my prep like through Instagram and stuff like that. And it's kind of, that's like probably how my Instagram started growing. Like it's, you know, it's not big by any means, but that it kind of started growing quite a lot back then because the organic reach was quite good as well. And I had people like messaging me. I'll get people messaging me each week like, oh, do you do like coaching? Do you do like personal training? And like people asking questions and stuff. And I was just like, no, I don't do coaching. No, I don't do plans. Like, no, I don't do this. No, I don't do that. And at the time I was just like working in retail and absolutely hating it. And then it got to a point where I was like, hold on, like I've been like building this, like all the plans and all the like systems behind for my online coaching business, like planning on doing it like kind of later on in my third year of uni or something, or after I finish uni. And then it got to a point where I was like, oh, I've got like lots of people like basically wanting to give me money to like help them. Like I can help them. I'm doing a job that I don't like. Like, why don't I do it now? So it's kind of like I said to myself, you know, I'll finish this year off of competing because I didn't want anything to kind of like get in the way and distract me. And then after that, I'll launch it. So kind of like by the time I got to the end of the year, I already had like a handful of people that were like already kind of like all in. They're already like, you know, let me know when you're going to start coaching and I'll join. So basically, as soon as I launched it, I had like several clients automatically join. So I kind of like I know from speaking to several other people, like a lot of people do it like free coaching, but I never did that. I never kind of did like the free side of things. It was always like you have to, you know, pay this much sort of thing, and then we'll coach. But I think it's very much, yeah, it depends on your demand at the end of the day. It's like, you know, if you don't have a demand for your service, which a lot of people don't, I mean, unless you do something that makes you stand out and gets you people who want to be coached by you, then you almost have to kind of, you know, kind of like, you know, give maybe free coaching or give like a very reduced price for the coaching, or coach family members or friends or something like that at a reduced fee to like get the initial results. But I think, yeah, if you can get that demand, and like especially if you're someone who's like a natural bodybuilder and done quite well, or if you're someone who is like a fitness model, or you're someone who's got like a decent following on Instagram, like it doesn't have to be decent, it just has to be like, you know, enough people to, you know, if you've got a couple hundred people like watching your stories and stuff like that, that's enough people for, you know, you to like to be interested in you. Do you know what I mean? So it's like if you've got that, then you can start off with not having to, you know, offer anything for free, I think.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So I guess what made you, I guess, to kind of move forward with it, so like what made you decide that you'd want to do the online versus the personal training? Like what was did you ever have any interest in actually like training clients like in the gym, or was it just more towards the personal training side or the online training side of things?
No, it's always been towards the online sort of things. Like now I'm starting to think like potentially I would actually quite like to do some in-person personal training stuff, but only to like people who were like quite like high up in certain. Do you know what I mean? Like, I want to make like work with bodybuilders to help improve them rather than just to like work with Janice from down the gym to to help her lose a bit of weight. Like so it's something that now I'm thinking maybe like doing a little bit of just like a couple hours each week. But back
You
then
thought
like
about how
what the
you like
main
have you thought about like how you'd integrate that into your online on like would it be just strictly like personal training clients and then you'd have your online coaching clients, or would you kind of like mingle the two and say like this is an online and a you know what I mean? Like, would you mix them, or would you just say like I have two streams of income? Here's my online coaching clients, and then here's the ones that kind of want to
Yeah,
be.
I think I'd keep it separate, but it would be integratable to an extent for the personal training clients to have the online service because obviously it's all set up. So it's like
Yeah,
to an extent, the personal training would just be kind of like like personal training a separate thing, and then obviously online coaching as an add-on for like a reduced price or something like that.
yeah,
But again, like the main thing for me why I wanted to do online coaching was because obviously at the time I didn't have a kid, I wasn't like living anywhere, and it was very much like I wanted to be like very mobile. I wanted to be able to travel and do whatever I wanted wherever. So like to me, being a personal trainer and being stuck in a certain area with like clients and joining, it just wasn't really something that I wanted to be in that sort of position. And again, it was kind of like I like the idea of doing it online. I like the idea of like not being in the gym. Like I spent enough time in the gym anyway. Like, do you know what I mean? I
yeah.
trained
Yeah,
I train a lot, especially in prep and that. If you're in the gym for like 2 hours doing cardio, 2 hours training, you're already spending like half your day in the gym anyway. So then to spend the rest of it in there training clients, I couldn't like I just couldn't do that.
it's
It
like
just
so much
ruined
easier. I
me.
feel like it'd be so much easier to blow off your workout as a personal trainer because you're in the gym. Like if you're working a 6 hour shift and you're with like three different clients or four different clients that day, it's like the last thing you want to do is stick around the gym. You know what I mean? To get your an hour workout in. And
Yeah.
I feel like it'd be good for the first little bit, but if you're constantly doing that, and I always like found that like I remember when I think I had a job interview for being a personal trainer, and it was like some people were saying like they train at other gyms just because
Yeah.
they were like just being in this one location all day, like you're training clients here, it's like it's good to get away. And then you had other people saying like, well, you should stick around because if you're training and someone approaches you, you know what I mean? It's like at least you're training in the same spot that you're offering the services. But it's like it's the best of both worlds. It's like, well, I'm here every day and then I'm training every day. It's like you just literally feel like you live in the gym. So
Yeah.
I think that like the online coaching provides you with like being able to help people get their fitness goals not inside the gym while actually prioritizing your workouts like when you go to the gym and not having like people judge you, I guess. Because I feel like if you were training online clients, you probably have a bunch of different clients who are in different areas and stuff, right? Whereas if you're training at the gym, it's like those are your clients, and if they see you working out or they see you doing something that you're not supposed to be doing, then it's kind of like it might hurt your reputation. Whereas like online, it's like you can go to the gym and like still have your connections there that you have, but not everyone that walks through the door is a client. Do you know what I
Mm.
mean?
Yeah, I think
So
it's one of those things. I think like it's there's pros and cons to both obviously. But yeah, like you said, if you're like I work with a lot of personal trainers now, like funny enough, and it is the same thing. Do you know what I mean? It's like because they're spending so much time in the gym working with their other clients that therefore they like lack the motivation and the drive and the time and stuff to actually like sort themselves out, and it's like a really frequent thing. Whereas obviously like as an online coach you kind of, especially when you're working for yourself, like whereas a lot of personal trainers don't particularly work for themselves because they work for gyms, so it's like they kind of are controlled a little bit in what they do. I think when you obviously work for yourself and you are an online coach, then you have complete time over what you do. It's like if you want space to train here and you're going to turn your phone off, whatever, like here, then you can do that as long as that's kind of told or put across to your clients. So that's pretty, that's like what I do. It's like if I'm training, then I don't look at my phone. Like that's my time to develop and to grow. So that's like kind of blocked off. Like likewise when it's like sleep or like time with my family. But obviously the rest of the time is work time. Whereas obviously, yeah, if you're a personal trainer sort of thing and you're surrounded by people who in the same gym who are your clients and they keep coming up to you during your workout and distracting you and stuff, it's not.
Another thing that came to my mind is like, I feel like when you're a personal trainer in the gym, you're not even pushing your own product. You know what I mean? You're pushing somebody else's product. Like you might, depending on which gym you work at, but like I'm assuming that some gyms, it's like you don't really have necessarily full control over like the programs and like the things that you give the clients, and like having to like almost like upsell, you know, and kind of not be able to give your professional opinion. It's like, whereas like if you're running it yourself and you're doing online coaching, the ball is completely in your court. You can do whatever you like. You're your own person. Like you're your own business. You're not like, you're not working in like the gym and they're not giving you an income. Like you're providing that for yourself. So therefore, like you have more like autonomy, or like you're able to kind of like dictate what you actually want to do and like put out programs that you believe in versus having to sign somebody up for a cycling class.
And I think as well, what like a lot of people don't realize is that if you're working for a gym and your gym is obviously getting you the clients and your clients are paying through the gym and all that sort of stuff, it's like your gym essentially like owns all your clients like data, and I mean, they kind of own that client. Like that client is there for the gym, and you just happen to be someone that's there to like that provide the service. Whereas obviously, you know, if you're an online coach, it's like specifically between you and them, and they're specifically investing in you rather than investing in the gym. So it's like, you know, what I always suggest to like personal trainers and stuff like that is, you know, especially these days, especially with the whole quarantine and the virus thing that's gone on, it just shows how important it is having an online business compared to just an in-person. Is, you know, it's all well and good doing personal training, but like try and funnel your clients out into the online thing. Like it's a very you know, well-known thing for personal trainers that they want to keep the clients for as long as possible because that's the income. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, if a client goes and they got to find another one, so it's easier to keep one. But instead of like trying to keep the client, just like have the client, keep them, and then funnel them off into an online coaching thing when they're ready. When you've built them up to the point in which they are ready for online coaching, then funnel them off into online coaching, and then you can almost, you know, have the best of both worlds, and then you can almost take that client from the gym and make them into your client. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, if you are someone who works for a gym, and you know, maybe try and keep it on the low, but do you know what I mean? Because I know not all gyms are probably gonna be happy with that, but that's kind of like what you would want to do.
And I know people that do have like, they have both, right? Like they have like, if they're working as a personal trainer, like they provide the services to the clients that come into the gym, but then they also self-brand, and then they also do like online coaching on the side. So it's like they have people that are like, so it's almost like they're working for two different, they have their own business, and then so they're able to have some online clients, and then they also have the gym clients that come in, and it's like being able to like not necessarily turn to the dark side and be like, hey bro, you want to join my online coaching? And like I'm kind of looking to transition from like being in the gym to being like an online trainer. It's like, don't join the gym side of things, join my thing. And it's like you're always trying to convince people not to train with you in the gym, to train with you like online, so then you can almost like establish yourself. So I feel like a lot of people are kind of like, there's definitely a lot of people that are doing that are like, yeah, I'll train you, and then they end up trying to like sell you into their online coaching business, right? It's like, and then you hardly hear of anyone doing it the opposite. Like I feel like a lot of people get into the personal training and then like kind of move into the online coaching. It's like, but like with it being so like easy to kind of get it, not easy to get, I shouldn't say easy to get into, but like I feel like the online thing is definitely going to be the way of the future, because you got a lot of people who live different schedules, work different, like, you know what I mean? And like in terms of balancing the nutrition, I don't know how you would do that. And doing check-ins, like I feel like personal training is like much harder to get results versus online coaching, because online coaching is constant communication, or like it can be, right? It's like you send your logs, you send your check-ins, you send your workout logs, whereas like the only time that you might see the client when you're training them in person is when they show up to the gym. And then like as opposed to that, it's like hard to have communication. I feel like it's a lot harder to have communication outside of that.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, what I've always looked at it as is that personal training is like it says, you're personally like you're training them. Do you know what I mean? It's not the nutrition, it's not the like the mental kind of side of things. It's not like the education. You were specifically
which to me
training
is
them.
more important than the whole. That's the most important part.
And it's like a separate thing. Do you know what I mean? Training it in itself is a separate thing. Like I know like plenty of people who are they're all like knowledged up and stuff with their nutrition and like all the other side of things, but they don't know how to perform certain exercises. They don't know like the mechanics for how to like work specific movements and stuff like that, how to band stuff up and all that. Do you know what I mean? That's a completely like separate thing. It's a bit like nutrition being a separate thing. So it's like obviously online coaching. It obviously depends on the service you offer, but like with mine, for example, it's like everything bundled into one. So it's like, we go through training, we go through like nutrition, we go through like the mental side of things and goals and that, and we go into like education. But I think like you said, like with personal training, it's quite hard to do that because they pay for a specific hour where you train them.
Yeah.
So it's like then if you're gonna like provide them with all this other stuff, you're basically gonna have to do it either as a separate service or do it for free, which is not really ideal.
It's funny too because like from what I've seen, a lot of times personal training is way more expensive than online coaching.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well,
but
that's the other thing, isn't it? That's the other thing.
more. You get like way more with online. Even like a crappy coach, or like not maybe a coach that isn't as good, you'd still be getting more online because at least if they know a little bit about nutrition, they know a little bit about something. At least you're getting like even if it's half good information, at least you're getting that and you're getting it for cheaper because I think like sometimes they're charging like $60 a session, right? And like if you go like 5 days a week, you could be paying like hundreds of dollars just for for sessions, and you're not even getting nutrition. Like maybe when you leave that day, they're like, okay, don't forget to eat good. Like don't forget to eat your calories, or don't forget to like, you know what I mean? Don't late night snack. It's like they tell you things that are obvious or like things that you already know. They're just trying to like reinforce that. Whereas like online coaching, it's like, to me, that's kind of that's the difference for me. It's like you get people who are just want to become a little bit more active. Then it's like, well, personal training might be good because they're just trying to learn the fundamentals of like the actual exercises. Whereas online coaching, it's like you should already have some of that stuff down. You should already understand like the importance. It's just you need that guidance. Like you need that someone there to be able to kind of like provide you with the right like plan, the right information, like based on your goals. So I think that like the difference is, to me, it's huge, right? Like between like online training versus like personal training. I think it's two different like degrees almost, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's just two different things altogether, I think.
Yeah. So in terms of like branding, like how important do you feel branding is like as a business? Like what kind of branding did you do? Like in terms of, can you just kind of like explain a little bit of branding that kind of went into in terms of like your personal brand? So like you yourself is obviously a brand. When people scroll through like your Instagram, like when I scroll through your Instagram, I see your workouts, I see your logo, I see your podcast, I see like whatever I'm seeing on your Instagram. It's like, to me, that's all incorporated of brands. It's like, what went into your thoughts in terms of like branding, or how did you incorporate that into your business?
So I don't know. I think one thing to like, obviously your personal brand, especially these days, it is like everyone has one job, and it's you as a person. So whether you've got like 100 followers or 100,000 followers, like you've got a personal brand. And I think, it's very much like, I think a lot of people get caught up on thinking too much on that side of things in terms of thinking, oh, I need to get like a logo and I need to get like a website and I need to get this, that, and the other before I start. But like, I didn't have a logo for like probably like a year. Like, I mean, I didn't have any of that. I didn't have a website, didn't have a logo. Like I was a full-time online coach before I had a logo pretty much. So it shows how like relevant it really is. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a nice thing to have, but it's not gonna build your business. Do you know what I mean? Having a logo is not gonna bring you in a client. Do you know what I mean? It's just a way of identifying.
From a professional standpoint, like I guess it makes you seem a little bit more professional, but like at the end of the day, it's like I kind of agree. Like I think branding's like important, but I think that like being in the fitness realm, it's like you're not doing somebody's taxes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like something that you're doing, like you need to be able to kind of like demonstrate the product. So it's like just having an Instagram account and like having like good quality pictures and good quality like posts on there and just relevant information and just like showing that you're kind of keeping up and you kind of understand what you're talking about. I think that that's like you're developing your brand, and like if people like think you're funny, or if people think you're like educational, or they think you're inspiring or motivational, it's like they just get hooked on that. And then that's kind of what they like. Oh, did you see that? Did you see his post the other day? He incorporated a little bit more bands in his training or whatever. It's like people like attach that to your identity, and then it's more of a personality game.
Yeah, I think it's almost like your personality mixed with, especially as a coach, like what you can offer and what you like. Do you know what I mean? It's like showing your personality, but also like what's under the hood. So like what you know and what you can do, and all that sort of stuff as well. I think like obviously people will follow you on social media, and people will like invest their time into watching your stuff if they like enjoy your personality, where they find you funny, where they can learn from all that sort of stuff. But I think specifically for coaching, it is more of the like, can you show people that, you know, you can provide them with the thing that they want. So if that's, you know, getting like lean, if they're someone who's a bit overweight and just can't get in shape, like when they go to your profile, do they look at it and go, oh, this person can help me get where I want to go? And I think that's, you know, that's very much the kind of thing that you want to get across. But again, it depends on what sort of niche you're going down. So it's like if you're not someone who's going down there, then you're.
And then I was just going to add on that. I think that in terms of like being a bodybuilder, it's almost harder, like a more competitive bodybuilder, because the reason why I say that is because like every bodybuilder goes through off seasons where they put on a little bit more fluff than they need. So it's like going through contests. It's like you might have pictures of yourself shredded, and then those may be like a pretty good marketing, you know what I mean, pictures that you use for marketing your service. But then there's times like where you're in the off season where it's like you're not necessarily like, you know what I mean, like where you should be for selling a coaching program, I guess, because not everybody understands like that in order to be able to build muscle, you need to kind of be in a surplus and do a pretty good like off season, right? So I think as a bodybuilder, I feel like it's kind of like it might be hard to balance that. Like if you're just getting started and you're like, well, I just want to cut so I can sell my products, you know what I mean? So it's like, but like if you're trying to build muscle, it's like you might actually have to do a 2-year bulk in order to actually build the muscle you're looking to build. So it's like a process in terms of like, are you actually ready yourself to like show people that, you know what I mean, that you've got to where you want to be. And
it's almost a case of like, if you can, like, do you know what I mean? If you're in a position where you can represent what you can sell, sort of thing, then by all means, that's fantastic. That's like, you know, if you've been doing it like long enough, stuff like, for example, that's essentially what I did. Like I represented precisely what I can do and what I can help other people do. Then I think that's great. But obviously, if you're not in that position, so for example, if you're not someone who, you know, is going to win a show, or you're not someone who looks good, like lean and stuff, like, firstly, I would say that you're probably not in a position where you want to be teaching that thing anyway, because for example, if you can't if you can't like step on stage and look really, really good, if that makes sense, you know, like win a show, or looking at, you know, super shredded or whatever, then you're probably not experienced enough to be able to teach someone else how to do that. So that kind of goes back to having done it before. But, you know, for example, if you're someone who is, maybe that's what you want to do, and then you want to be an online coach, but maybe to be an online coach, like I've got spoke to like various people before, and it's like, you know, they want to be a bodybuilder, and they obviously are in the process of becoming a bodybuilder. They're still like, you know, maybe like 18, 19, 20 years old. You know, they want to be a bodybuilder, that's their goal, and then they automatically think, oh, I want to be an online coach and teach people how to do that. But it's like, if they want to become an online coach, they need to be teaching maybe they need to be teaching like 50-year-old Janice or whatever how to like lose a bit of weight, because that's the level that they're currently at in terms of their like knowledge and their experience and stuff like that. So you've kind of got to think of it a little bit differently, I think, and that's where a lot of people go wrong, because they think, oh, like that's what I want to do, and that's what I'm currently doing, so therefore I'm going to teach people how to do that. But it doesn't always work like that.
Yeah, and we kind of like, I think an interesting thing was like, I think that a lot of like, there's not a lot of money in bodybuilding, like in terms of just like being a competitive bodybuilder, like in terms of like being in the Olympia and stuff. So it's like kind of where I'm going with this is like, you see all those professional bodybuilders, like Phil Heath might have a little bit of money, but then you get the people that are placing in the top 5 at the Olympia who are not making a lot of money necessarily, so to speak. But then their business is like built off bodybuilding, and like not necessarily. So like what I'm trying to say is like you get people who are putting out content versus the people who are like living what they do. So like people like bodybuilders that like try to sell, like will sell the programs because that's the one that they're following, versus trying to take people in and create content and show, kind of know what you're talking about. So I think in terms of like trying to make money off bodybuilding, I think that there's people that can do it, but then there's people that might have to go to online fitness coaching. So I have a question for you. So it's like, if you had to pick one that you could make the similar income, so if you could continue coaching and make the income that you're making now, or if you could just stop doing that and make the income that you're doing based on natural bodybuilding, I guess which path would you take? Would you stick with online coaching, or would you go more towards natural bodybuilding if there was money in it? Like, let's say bodybuilding was a sport where you could earn definitely a lot of money, no matter like competing in shows. Which one, I guess, interests you more?
I don't know. It depends, really. Like, I think it's a difficult one to pick. In it, it's like, because obviously the way that I look at things, like bodybuilding for me is like my foundation, if that makes sense. So it's like, there's very few things that come between me and going to the gym. Do you know what I mean? It would have to be like a life and death situation. So yeah, like obviously if there was, like, everyone knows there's no money in actual bodybuilding. Like even at a pro level, like the only money that you get is going to come from sponsorships and stuff like that, which is more linked to social media than bodybuilding itself. But like, I think, yeah, if there was money in natural bodybuilding, like there was a good amount of money in it, like you could, become very successful. I would probably pursue that. But the way I've always looked at it is that like any money that you get from bodybuilding itself anyway, such short term. So even if you get sponsorships and stuff like that, like companies come and go, you could break your leg and, then you're not allowed to bodybuild anymore. Then you lose all your income and you're screwed. Do you know what I mean? Whereas obviously with online coaching, it's like a business, so it's a separate thing. So like I don't know, I don't think you can really compare the two in terms of like one or the other, because one's like a short term thing. It's a bit like being a professional athlete, isn't it? Really.
So you kind of separate, try to separate you in terms of your online coaching. That's what you do to kind of like as an income producer, and then in terms of your bodybuilding, you do both because you enjoy them. Like you enjoy coaching people, you enjoy working with people, but you also kind of like you try to. So I guess in terms of separating,
I was looking at completely separate
coaching versus your I guess how do you find you're working with people online, helping them achieve their goals. How do you separate yourself from your online coaching business and your actual progress in the gym? Like what kind of things do you do to kind of separate that?
I don't know. I think the main thing is like I'm very much like when I'm in the gym, like as soon as I enter the gym, like there is like I won't look at do you know what I mean? Like I'm not working anymore. So I think that's a very important thing for like anyone who's not an online coach, is that, it's all well and good to be like, I provide like a 24/7 service. And that, aside from, it's like if a client is like an emergency and I've got a client in prep who's like a couple of days out and they need to call me during my session, then I probably would answer it. Do you know what I mean? But if it's someone just messaging me, like a client messaging me in the middle of a session to ask a question, they'll have to wait until after I'm done, because it's like, it's like when you're sleeping. Do you know what I mean? You're not going to wake up in the middle of the night to answer a client's question. It's just like a generic question. It's like that's your time. I think, it's like if you're not doing that, then you're almost like holding yourself back, because you're like, reducing the like progress that you can make with like all aspects. Do you know what I mean? If you're not getting enough sleep because you're saying that clients can message you at like midnight, then you're like then making your service worse almost, and reducing your progress and stuff by doing that. So it's just like
So the only thing that I would say on top of that would be like, so in terms of like, I think that's a really valid point, is like to be able to disconnect yourself from your phone and being able to know what your working hours are and kind of make those like the top priority in terms of when you're doing that, you're focusing on that. And then when you're trying to like do the gym, or you're trying to go to the gym and you're trying to better yourself, make that the priority. So I think it's like being able to put your phone away and disconnect. So just like a follow-up question on that, or a follow-up idea that kind of came to mind was in terms of like filming content. Because I feel like a lot of people get hooked in the filming content side of things, and they film more content than they actually do themselves. Do you know what I mean? And it's like if they're an online fitness coach and they film content, kind of like in my situation. I guess you'd say like I film a lot of content. I do provide online coaching services, and then I also kind of go to the gym. So it's like for me, it's like that's just one huge umbrella. And it's just like I'm doing that all the time. Like I'm not stopping from what I'm doing each one. So it always feels like one's rolling into the other. So it's like when I'm coaching people, I have to provide people plans and nutrition. So I'm always trying to make sure that they're getting what they need. And then when they're not getting what they need, then I have to deliver content online. So it's like, then I got to think about how I can incorporate the content that I'm putting out to like my workouts. And then when I go to the gym, I have to like film the content. So then I have to still be able to find a way to balance filming the content versus getting a solid workout in and actually improving myself. So I think in terms of like, to kind of relate that back to you, it's like, where do you draw the line? So like mentioning like a prep series. So you were following a prep series and you were posting it to Instagram. Where do you draw the line between actually documenting your progress to actually saying, you know what, I think I need to put the phone down and get to work?
So like, it's actually, that's a really, really good question, because the way that I look at things, and I think it depends on you as a person. So it depends on like the coach or the athlete, or whatever. It depends on like your priorities and what you like put, what you put in order of priority. Like for me, for example, I put bodybuilding at the top of my like priority sort of thing. Like I'm a professional, like I look at myself as like a professional athlete before anything else. Like that's just the approach I go with, because I'm like all or nothing. So it's like, I've got like long-term goals for my bodybuilding and stuff like that. Like, so I'm 100% into that. That's my like long-term thing. It's what everything else is. It's what everything else kind of like is branched off of. So like there is nothing which will get in the way of my training. Like, if I'm planning to like film a YouTube video and I go in the gym and I'm like, this is going to put me off my training session today, then I won't film it, and then the YouTube video won't happen. Very much like, if I've got to record a video, or if I said I'll record a video for a client, and then I go to the gym and I'm like, I can't do it because I'm busy training or whatever, or like, it's going to put me off my session, I won't record that video for the client. I'll then have to go back and do it, or I'll do it at home or something. But like nothing gets in the way of my training sessions, just like very much nothing will get in the way of me prepping my food and nutrition, because I'll set that out. That's my time. I need to do this to progress as, in all shapes sort of thing. So it's like I prioritize bodybuilding, and I think that's probably why I'm a little bit different to quite a lot of people, because I look at that as like the number one priority rather than the online coaching and the business. Obviously, that's like, obviously family stuff's first, but like obviously, it's bodybuilding, then it's like, the business, the online coaching would be kind of like after that for me. But I find like the two, you don't really necessarily have to have like one or the other, and they don't necessarily get in the way. If it's done right. So I kind of think that's a nicer way to put it, especially because then you've always got that foundation of your bodybuilding, and you've got the foundation of your nutrition and stuff and your sleep. So, those things are always nailed in place. And then my online coaching and businesses and stuff is kind of like built over the top of that. So it's like where I've got gaps in my day, then that's where that's, where I've got space in the day, that's where I'll coach and work and, bring on new clients and all that sort of stuff. And quite often like my check-in days are built around when my rest days are and stuff like that. So I think, you've got to have, you can't try and have like everything. You've got to have some sort of structure to things. You can't just try and be, I'm a full, I'm a professional bodybuilder, and then I'm 100% into my coach and 100% into this. You have to kind of, lay out the foundations and to be very clear with like yourself, and obviously then your clients, of where everything stands.
I think you need to figure out. I think you hit it on the head when you said you need to figure out what your main priority is. And I think a lot of people, what the problem is a lot of people get too caught up with trying to do everything and trying to do it like kind of well, versus trying to focus on one thing and doing it really well. So I think that if you spread out too thin, then you're never really going to be good at one thing. If you're focusing all the time on creating content, then you might not achieve the bodybuilding goals that you have. Whereas if you focus on bodybuilding, then at least like, that's your priority, and that all your attention's going there. Therefore, it's like whatever makes you the happiest. I think in terms of just like being able to figure out what makes you the happiest, where that is, and making sure that you prioritize that. And I think planning comes huge into it. Because personally for me, when I first started creating a lot of content online, I put out like 3 videos a week on YouTube, is what my goal is, right? But like I came to a point where like I was going to the gym twice a day. Like I was going to the gym in the afternoon to train, because that was my workout, and then I would go like at midnight to film content, to be able to get content for YouTube, because when I went to the gym every time there was people there, and like I'm a solo creator, so basically I film my own content. So like I always found that it was so much easier when the gym was empty. And obviously, because you don't have to work around people, and you don't have people screaming at you, and like you don't have to block people out of your videos and like explain to people why you're filming. So like I always just kind of like went to the gym and like at midnight. So I would be working out twice a day, and then I realized that kind of started to get ridiculous, because I just found myself not having any time for anything else. So what I started doing was I started combining my workouts with my content. So then I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna like shift my schedule around and start going to the gym every night at midnight. And then so I would go to the gym and I would do my workout first, and then I would film the content that I needed so I'd be at the gym for 4. I gotta be at the gym from midnight to 4 o'clock in the morning. 3 o'clock in the morning.
I think it's again, isn't it? It's like what we were saying earlier about the whole online coaching and bodybuilding being 2 separate things. It's like, so's being like an influencer or like a content creator, like that in itself is something different. So it's like, if you want to go down the route of being like very much down the whole like YouTube and content creation side of things, you're going to have to specifically like put time into that one thing, and that might be going to the gym for 2 hours every other day to specifically record content. And then, that's obviously on its own. There's not going to be like your bodybuilding time. That will be content creation time.
Yeah.
And I've done that in the past as well. And like, it's probably something I will do once gyms and stuff reopen again, potentially, especially once like, I'm prepping and want to record more content and stuff. Like I'll probably set some time to the side to do that. But I think, yeah, like if you're trying to merge the two together, and I guess like, everyone only has so much time in a day as well. And that's where obviously the whole thing is, if you're trying to like do everything all at once, you can't always do that. So it's like priorities. It's like, at the end of the day, if you want to be like a full-time online coach and you want to be like a full-time content creator and a full-time bodybuilder, and you've got like, family and all that sort of stuff on the side as well, it's going to be like difficult to be able to find the time to be able to put enough into all those things.
Yeah. So on top of that, what would you say, like, so now that we've kind of clarified, so bodybuilding and then like your coaching and then everything kind of follows after that. But in terms of like, what do you find like your biggest struggles are, I guess, in terms of like managing your bodybuilding, you're like competing for yourself and doing like your workouts for yourself, versus trying to figure out everything else? Like, what do you find the hardest thing to balance, or what do you think is the hardest struggle for you to kind of like that you have between like prioritizing your workouts and then also having to deal with clients and family and everything else that kind of comes after?
I don't know. It's a difficult one, really. I think like probably because everything's changed quite recently as well, obviously with the family. Whereas before it was very much like me bodybuilding, obviously my partner, but before you have a kid, it's not necessarily the same. Do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't take up as much time at all. So it's like, but it was very much me like bodybuilding and then obviously like online coaching that all kind of, it was quite easily merged into one. Do you know what I mean? Whereas like now it's kind of managing time with like my little one and stuff like that. So like, for example, I might be about to go to the gym, say to like my training partner, I'm going to be there at like 6 o'clock or like 3 o'clock or something like that. And then I've got to like take care of Sienna or whatever for like half an hour and do something, like change a nappy or something. And then it's like, then I'll be half an hour late. And that's just like, so it's kind of obviously now time is a little bit different. And in terms of like, I have to make sure that, there's certain things that, for example, if I've got a call with a client or something like that, then that can't be missed. So that will I just have to make sure that everything is like super, super planned out in terms of like timing wise, if it's important. But yeah, it's probably like timing wise, I guess. So it's like other things, a bit of a hit.
So do you have tips at all for like people that are trying to do better time management, I guess, in terms of being able to like structure your day? Like, do you have any tips for how to like kind of make sure that you're able to kind of get everything done that you want to get done, or just being able to balance just kind of like your tasks, I guess you'd say?
I don't know. I've like what I've always done, what I've always found, like I started doing it during prep a few years back, would be like, just like, like figuring out your day. Obviously, you've got 24 hours in a day. Like, go from the things that are like obviously most critical, like your sleep and stuff like that, like, and block them out each day. So it's like, obviously, if you want to get 8 hours sleep, if you're a bodybuilder, for example, me, like I need to get at least 8 hours sleep. So that 8 hours is blocked out and like gone. It doesn't exist anymore. Then I've got my like, I think like at the minute it's probably about like 4 hours around like kind of training time. Obviously, like, traveling to the gym, training for like 2 hours and then traveling back and stuff and showering, all that. So it's like about, 4 hours or so that's blocked out as well, because I need that for bodybuilding. And then, on certain days I'll have like my meal prep time, which is also blocked out. I have, like check-ins on certain days, which is also blocked out. So it's kind of like working back of like the most vital things that you need to get done. And then obviously the space that you kind of have left in the middle, then you can kind of, then you can kind of prioritize. Obviously, you can't always block everything out and be like specifically scheduled everything. But I mean, there's the things that you need to get done. Like, I think if you can just block all those out and pretend like almost you don't have an option to change those things, I think it's probably the best way. And then obviously the time you've got left, and it also stops you like wasting time doing stuff. Like, it might be that you feel like sitting down or you'd normally like sit down and watch like Netflix for like 3 hours. But if you look at your schedule for the day and you just don't have that time, then you're not going to do that, because you're like, oh, well, I can't do that today because it's not possible. So I think it almost stops you doing that as well.
I think as like bodybuilders, or just coming from somebody who shares similar interests with you in terms of that, I feel like people have a hard time doing the same thing every day. A lot of people kind of need that variety, whereas like maybe me and you, like we can do that. Like we can we know that we need 8 hours sleep. We're working backwards. We know we need 4 hours to train. And I think a lot of people like need some variety. So I think that's kind of the reason why, to me, it's like people get sick of it and they're just like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. And it kind of just like, you kind of get burnt out.
Yeah, I
Whereas
think
kind of want to like, you kind of need to love it. Like you kind of need to, if you're getting into it, you have to really know that you love it. And it's something, because you got to think that like fitness itself, it's very time consuming, because if you're a professional video gamer, it's like sleep doesn't matter, nutrition doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Whereas bodybuilding, it's like those two are the most important things. So it's like you need to worry about your sleep, you need to worry about your nutrition, but on top of that, you also need to train. So it's like you got three things that are the most time consuming parts of any day: is eating, sleeping, and then going to the gym. So it's like it's a very time consuming thing. So I think it's like you have to learn just to like you have to learn just to love it and kind of be like a creature of habit, and like really develop a good routine that like works best for you, because it's very easy to kind of slip off one. And I think that's kind of where a lot of people go wrong, is they kind of just don't develop a routine that works, and they end up bouncing back and forth. And they end up not getting the sleep, or they end up skipping a meal, or they end up not preparing their meals, or it's just because they don't have that time management skill to say, you know what, today's a meal prepping day. I should be meal prepping as opposed to watching Netflix. So
yeah, I think it comes back to that, like that thing as well. Is that you obviously got to love it. I always think like, you've got to look at it as a thing like, would you do, like when you look at like beginning a business, like online coaching business or something like that, because it's very similar to bodybuilding. It takes a lot of time and you don't necessarily get much back for it. Like if you worked out how many hours, like if I worked out how many hours I put in for what I got paid in the first year of online coaching, it would probably be like, like $0.1 per hour or something. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and it's that in itself, like regardless of what business you put in, like anyone who's started a business stuff knows that you put in like a lot of time and you don't get anything. You work for free, but it's obviously a long-term vision. And it's the same with bodybuilding. Do you know what I mean? You're going to put in a lot of time and a lot of effort. You're going to make a lot of sacrifices for years and years and years. You're not going to get anything for it. So it's like, if you're not willing to make that like commitment and make that kind of take that risk, do you know what I mean? Because you could quite easily do it for 20 years and get nothing, like literally nothing from it. But if you're not willing to take that risk, then just don't do it. And I think that's where like a lot of people get quite funny and stuff, because it's like, do you know what I mean? It's like I think a lot of people almost feel like they should be doing that when they really they really don't want to be. And it's almost like that the only person that's kind of made them feel like that is themselves. So they'll look at someone, for example, they'll look at someone like me who does it and wants to do it, and then will get offended by it. But it's two different things. It's like who you listen to at the end of the day. Like, if you don't want to do it, if you think about that and you think of the idea of, being immaculate with your bodybuilding and stuff for 5 years and getting like literally, seeing like literally nothing physical from it, then don't do it. Like, it's a choice at the end of the day, and you don't have to be a bodybuilder, you don't have to be an online coach, you don't have to, you can quite easily just go to the gym and enjoy it and work, for someone else and have a nice life. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's very much.
Yeah, that's true. I think it has, like, you have to really know what's for yourself, and I feel like a lot of people just kind of like don't realize right off the bat that like they just see other people doing it and it looks attractive. You know what I mean? It's like the lifestyle of like doing an online fitness coach and like being like working for yourself and like going to the gym I guess not whenever you want, but it's kind of like a more attractive option. But honestly, when you actually like think about, like you said, all the time that you put in and like how much you're making, like when you first started off, just like with any business, but like in terms of like to get back, it's like you don't get it. You not necessarily get anything back with bodybuilding. It's kind of like you might compete your whole life and never win a show. So but it's like being able to like love it and understand that like it's a process, it's a journey, and it's like you have to learn to like embrace that and like kind of like it that way. So I think that like you almost have to have like personal.
Oh, hold on a second. Yeah. I've got to go. Is that all right? Yeah. So I think like the main thing is definitely going to be like obviously all like the systems and stuff like that. So even just looking at things like like your coaching sheet, so what you're giving to your clients on like the training plans, the nutrition plans, like if they've got any other things on their life, like some goal sheets, some like personal track where they can put all their like weight and their data and all that sort of stuff. All that sort of stuff takes time to set up, because obviously I think, if like obviously a lot of people will initially start doing it and they'll like just automatically go into bringing on clients, but then obviously for each client you're bringing on, then you've got to go away and make all this stuff for every person that comes to you, and it ends up being like
Yeah.
if you've then got like 10 people that come to you all in the same day, like realistically, can you go away and do all that and set them up in enough? Do you know what I mean? Like it's going to be like a thing that like kind of holds you back from growing. So I think it's an important thing to think about, like when, like even when you're starting, think of what would you do if you got like 50 clients come to you next week? Like, would you
Yeah.
be able to take them all on? Because if not, then obviously, what are you going to do in the future when that potentially does happen? So I think, yes, things like obviously your coaching sheets, making sure that all the processes behind everything's sorted. So, like the process behind, how are you bringing on a client? Like, when they're interested, like, how are you going to like sell to them? How are you going to like get the information off them? How are you going to make sure that they are the right sort of person, that you want to be working with? Obviously, then, if they join, like, how are you, if you've got like a sheet in place so they can, put all the information that you need to be able to create them a plan. Obviously, that's, something on itself. And then obviously, kind of going through the process, like once they join, then what is the process of them getting their plans? Do you have that in place? Obviously the actual plans themselves, which obviously, quite a big thing. And then obviously you've got like the check-in process, like how are you communicating with those clients? So I think there's quite a lot to it that, you don't really think of in the beginning. And I think, it's not always something you need to get nailed down straight away, because I think that is part of the process. It's part of like learning. Do you know what I mean? Like you need to, you're not, it's like 9 times out of 10, you're not really going to start off with having like a lot of clients anyway. You have a couple, and you can kind of like learn from that, like what your client base kind of needs and what you need to kind of make in advance to like for them to kind of like, cut down the time on your end.
So what did you find was the most time consuming part, like that you found yourself spending the most time on in terms of like the templates, or was it just kind of like figuring out like everything that you kind of needed to have in place?
Yeah, I think probably the most time consuming thing is just the education side of it, like, just making sure that you actually know how to like be a good coach.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing being able to do something for yourself, but like it's a completely other thing being able to like coach another human being. Especially online coaching, because it's more than just, it's more than just knowing the like math behind putting someone in a calorie deficit. Like you are, essentially their, coach. So they're going to come to you with various problems. You need to know how to, be like a good teacher almost. So I think that's probably the main thing. Obviously the other things like coaching sheets, and like the kind of, it's more like just the entire system behind bringing on a client and working with them, and just that entire system itself. Because I think it's not really like a separate thing. Obviously you do have like your coaching sheets and you do have like your client intake form and stuff like that. But I think that the whole thing as a whole, like that whole system of, everything that the client gets sort of thing, I think that's probably like the main thing that you need to spend a lot of time doing. And that it takes a lot of time to set it up, especially if you're, not like a tech whiz or not someone who's used a lot of these programs before, because quite often you're not necessarily someone that's, used like Google Sheets or whatever app you're going to be using. So I think that's probably like the most time consuming bit in general.
So in terms of, I think the biggest struggle that I have in terms of like coaching people and just having like issuing programs, it's like you can prescribe the exercises, you can prescribe the sets, the reps, the rest time. But in terms of like intensity, how do you like if you were going back to our discussion with being someone who's training someone in person, it's like, whether or not they're really kind of pushing themselves, I guess. But in terms of like someone who you give a program to, how do you kind of like monitor intensity, or how do you like ensure that they're pushing themselves? Is there any way that you found has, other than just like trusting the client, I guess, to do it and to kind of like give their effort, but like how do you kind of like administrate like the intensity aspect of like someone's training?
So one thing like I do is obviously I use Google Photos, which is, again, it's just like a good way that clients can put like photos and videos and stuff to you, send it over rather than on WhatsApp. It kind of keeps it organized. So I use that. And one thing I push quite heavily is to clients to consistently put in training videos in there. So it's like part of their check-in process. We'll go through their videos and obviously analyze their training. And that's how we kind of monitor that side of things. Because as you said, it is all really good giving someone a training program, but then obviously you don't know how they're following it. Like, you give them a squat to do, But their squat form could be terrible, and it's like if you don't address that, that's obviously that could potentially lead to like issues further down the line. And they could be they could have a working set of like on something like squats, and they could be just giving up like halfway through just because they haven't like unlocked that ability to train that hard yet. And obviously that's like a really key thing in bodybuilding or any sort of results really, is that ability to actually just work hard and put in effort. So yeah, I get them to record like working sets of exercise on the phone. I mean, everyone has a phone these days. Like sometimes it can be a little bit daunting if you're not used to like recording yourself. But I think these days most people are like on Instagram. Most people have used the phone to record themselves at some point or another. So that's what I generally do.
Like the training, so I have two things on the training. So do you normally periodize a program for somebody? And in terms of periodization, like do you, so for example, like going back to the intensity, do you use like RPE or do you use like reps in reserve? Do you use any of those kind of things, or do you know like what those are?
Yeah, I have in the past, and like there are like some points now which I will use like an RPE system or something like that. But generally, I don't use that anymore, because I think like the way that I train, I never train to like an RPE system, and I think like it has its place in things like powerlifting, but I think when it comes to like bodybuilding and just general population clients training, I think if you tell someone to do like RP8, unless they're like a powerlifter and they know their 1 rep max and stuff like that, and they know it's like it's very difficult to be able to kind of like judge. So what I usually do is like with my training programs, it's very much like you have working sets and like warm-up sets. So if you've got like a set of squats, for example, you would work up in warm-up sets to your working weight, and then you'd do like 2 working sets on squats. And obviously the working set is always to like maximal effort unless it says otherwise.
Yeah. So in terms of periodization, do you kind of do you give clients like periodization where they kind of have like a kind of like they're like manipulating like volume, intensity, and frequency, or do you just kind of like do that based on feeling, or do you kind of have like an idea of saying like this is going to be your first month, this is going to be your second month, here's the progressions that we're working on, here's how I'm going to manipulate volume to kind of like gradually increase volume over time? Or do you kind of how do you kind of deal with that aspect of it, just to make sure that like, because after a while it's kind of hard to notice if somebody's actually progressing, and it's like they could be going in and doing similar exercises and like whether or not they need like a deload. So I guess like, do you have any of that kind of stuff into your training, or do you find yourself kind of using that?
I prefer to like go off check-ins, because that's why I think check-ins come in like that's why they're like so key with like the online coaching, rather than just kind of put something out there to begin with. Because like my issue of just like periodizing something, whereas you just like kind of go off what it looks like on paper, is that someone can quite easily do like 2 more reps on an exercise, but then them 2 more reps they could be to like a lesser quality of like execution, or they could do them quicker and less time under tension. So I think like it's one thing like something being correct on paper, but it's another thing like in practice something being like actually working, if that makes sense. So I prefer going off like a client's feedback, and the same with like deloads. I don't like auto-regulate them. Like if a client comes to me and they're like, I'm ready to go for the next week, then generally we'll go another week, and then we'll kind of like keep an eye on it when it gets to a point. Because again, like you will get some people who just haven't unlocked that ability to train hard enough yet to actually like earn deloads. So you might get someone who's like trains like an absolute savage, and you have to pull them back every like 8-10 weeks or whatever to have a couple of days off. But then you might have someone who can literally train for like 6 months because they're not training that hard anyway, so they don't actually require like time off.
Okay, so in terms of like, we covered a little bit of the training. Now I kind of want to go over to like nutrition and kind of how you deal with nutrition. So when a client first comes in, let's say they're a complete new client who like has a little bit of tracking history, and I guess like they kind of understand like how to track calories, but like how do you deal with like being able to, like, so let's say their goals is to like bulk or whatever, like they want to like gradually increase muscle, just having a slight surplus with their diet. How do you go about first of all like determining like their caloric needs for like based off their body, I guess, for bringing in a new client, someone that you haven't had experience working with, and then in terms of like the diet itself, like do you do more of a flexible dieting approach, or do you kind of just say like, we're going to do a structured meal plan and this is kind of like what you should eat with like substitutes? Like kind of how do you get the client started with nutrition for their goals, and then like what kind of nutrition would you give them?
So now it all starts like I always have a phone call with every client that comes on to begin with. So it's like part of the intake process. So I get to know them. So obviously I can get a good amount of information through that anyway. And then we have the client intake form, which obviously, is quite like in depth. It means, has everything that I need to be able to go away and kind of, make the first like lot of their programs. So like on that, you've got like their body weight, you've got their height, you've got like pictures of them, what they currently look like. So you see their body composition. I'll have on there things like what do you do for work. So, I think that's something that's like incredibly important because like, someone that's a PT, for example, generally someone who's a personal trainer is going to be getting like upwards of like 15,000 steps a day. They're going to be like super active. Whereas if someone's like, oh, I work at like, in an office, that might be like 3,000 steps every day at a push. So that in itself is quite important. And I think again, like the more you coach for, the more like you just kind of intuitively know what someone's caloric needs are going to be depending on the data that you have. So it's like when I first started, it would maybe take me like 2-3 weeks to get someone where I wanted them to be in regards to their calories, just because obviously I wasn't quite as experienced in knowing like kind of how it all worked, if that makes sense. But now it's very much like I can get someone bang on like in the first week 9 times out of 10 just through like the experience. Obviously previously like I would kind of like half go off like a calorie calculator, if that makes sense, and obviously add it, and then like as time progresses, that kind of changes into like your own experience, I think, and you kind of just know intuitively after working with like such a variety of people that this person's a personal trainer, they're like this is their kind of body composition, this is their kind of personality. Like you can kind of just gradually kind of tell almost.
Okay. So in terms of like meals, do you kind of just do like a structured meal plan, or do you kind of do just flexible dieting, just hitting macros?
So when it comes to like the actual like diet side of their kind of like coaching, I give clients like an option. So they always have like either a meal plan, like a strict meal plan sort of thing, which they can stick to if they want to. And generally with like contest prep is what I suggest, is people just stick to the meal plan just because it's easier. It means that, there's less like chance of them slipping up because it's literally like bang on. And then obviously, if they want to, which is something that like I quite often like put towards like lifestyle clients or people in the off seasons, that they can obviously do a flexible approach and just go off their macros. And then obviously I'll give them like advice on what foods and stuff to maybe change if they want that advice. But I kind of leave it open to the client to choose what they kind of prefer. And obviously sometimes clients will go from one to the other if they, maybe they try like the meal plan thing. Cause I think like the meal plan's quite handy to begin with, because a lot of people starting off like they need that like straight away structure, and they quite often they come to a coach because they don't actually know what they need to eat and stuff. So I think having the meal plan thing there is very good initially, and then obviously over time kind of educate them on how to do it themselves, which is obviously kind of the goal as a coach anyway, and then obviously put them onto kind of like macros and calories.
So in terms of like, now I kind of want to move into just more of like your day to day. So I guess like in terms of like your work hours, I know it's kind of like, for me personally, it's kind of, that's what I struggle with the most, is just kind of figuring out like, not necessarily how many hours I'm putting in, but like based on the workload that I got. So in terms of like a typical day to day, like what would be a typical day for you to kind of like how you kind of like get your work done, what kind of what time you wake up, what time you go to bed, like just kind of run me through, and then like going to the gym and like being able to like balance that, like just give me a general flow of the day.
Yes, it's gonna be it's fairly difficult to do, to be honest, because obviously everything for me has changed very much. Like it very much was before. I had like a lot more time. Obviously, it wasn't like, I would get like bang on like 9-10 hours sleep every single night. I'd go to bed at like midnight and wake up at like 9 o'clock, for example, like every single day. Like, and it was very much structured. I'll go gym at an exact time every single day. Whereas obviously I only moved like 3 months ago, obviously. And then obviously since then it's been a little bit different, because it means my like sleep quality has changed a little bit. So whereas before I'd be in bed, if I wanted to get 8 hours sleep, I would go to bed at 12 and wake up at 8. Whereas now it might be a case that I need to go to bed at like 11 and wake up at 9 to actually get 8 hours of sleep. So it's kind of, my days do vary a little bit more now, and I have to be a little bit more flexible, I think. And the same with like training. Whereas before I was training on my own, so I like could train whenever I wanted to. I just set at a time. Now I've started training with like a training partner and stuff like that. So we kind of vary it depending on when we're both working. So it can be, my day does vary. But what I do like to do, like, the main thing which I do to structure my day is obviously have set days for my check-ins, which are, like I said before, obviously I block them out. That time out of the day. Generally I put them on like rest days, and then my training days. Like the main thing I do to structure my day is with my food. So I'll like prep meals in advance for like 4 days at a time. And then I'll always have like 3 like staple meals, which I'll eat year round, which is obviously like your standard like rice and chicken and or like, beef and stuff like that. So they'll just generally be like the staple of my diet. And then I'll just add things in around that. And that kind of like helps me structure things, I think.
So in terms of creating like your own work hours, do you kind of like, do you put in a set amount of hours per day, or do you just kind of do it based on like a schedule or like the needs?
No, like generally I give myself a good amount of time to train. So like, quite often I'll be in the gym for like 2 hours at a time. And then like it usually takes me like maybe like, by the time I get there and get ready, warmed up and stuff, and by the time I finish chatting to whoever I'm training with and then end up leaving, like quite often it's like a 4-hour period and stuff, like around, 4 or 5 hour period around that. So depending on when I'm training, obviously that will kind of be like, I know on my training days that's got to be in there somewhere. So that kind of gets placed depending on obviously when, depending on obviously when I'm training, that will be placed there. And then I'll work out when I'm going to be working around my training almost. Which obviously, being like a full-time online coach, you can do. Obviously, if you're a personal trainer, it's a little bit different because obviously then you've got to like know in advance when you're working. So I think that again is like kind of the benefit to working online.
Yeah, no, for sure. That makes sense. I always try to for me personally, I always like to try to block off some time. So personally, like I was never really a morning person, but like the last couple, probably about the last month, maybe I've been trying to wake up like at a decent time. So I've been getting up like every day at like 7, and I literally just put in like maybe 5 hours in the morning. And then I just like do everything that I need to do for like based off my business, based on YouTube, be able to create content, just being able to do everything that I need in that time. And then I make sure that what I'm doing at the hardest time that I found was getting my meals in. So it's like I'd skip so many meals because I'd just be focused on doing what I'm doing. And then by the time like I'd have to pick a certain time to go to the gym. So I'd be like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, I'd be going to the gym. And then I'd always try to get work done after that. But like I just found myself too exhausted. Just because by the time I got home and showered, it was like 8 p.m. And it was just kind of like, I don't really feel like doing too much. So I always tried to like make sure the mornings were the most productive. And then when I chose to go to the gym, that's kind of like how I separated it, and just like making sure, like I just recently switched to like a structured meal plan for myself because I just want to I've always did flexible dieting, and I just want to make sure that I have that structure now because like it's so hard playing catch up. Like I have to eat 2 meals in a row, or like, you know what I mean? I don't have enough meals in me before I train. And then like, so it's just kind of like being able to balance the two. So I always try to like at least give myself like 5 hours is kind of what I do. Like for work wise, like things that I need to get done, I always try to figure out 5 hours goes towards that, the rest training, and then whatever I have time for after that.
I think I think for like a lot of people, like obviously there's only generally you're not going to be training at like 11 o'clock in the evening or at like 6 o'clock in the morning especially if you work for yourself. Like it's not something you really choose to do for most people. So I think like obviously like I would like if I work generally it's in the evening or the mornings. So obviously I'll try and get a block off in the morning, then go and train at some point during the day. Like, I might train in the evening, which gives me all day to kind of work, but I might train like midday. Like at the moment, I'm generally training around like 2 o'clock. So it'd be like, between like kind of, 1:30 to like, 4:30 or whatever, or 5:30. I'm like, that's my like kind of training time. And then obviously after that, then I'll do some work in the evenings. Obviously like this podcast now kind of, that being in there. And then, obviously try and do some work in the morning, kind of work like that. So it's kind of similar to what you're saying, I guess.
Yeah, I found that like if I wasn't doing that, then like I wouldn't be getting everything done that I want, because I'm huge on like I've been really big on like time management lately and like activity, just kind of like trying to find ways to kind of deal with that, because there's times where like I'll be sit down on my computer for like 20 minutes, end up getting up, and like being home all the time, especially now more than ever because all isolated. But like I'm literally just going into the fridge every 4 seconds, just out of boredom, right? So like I live in a small apartment, so it's like I can be focused for like, it takes like 10 minutes. I think I read a study and it was like, it takes about like 10 to 15 minutes to sit down to actually get focused. And then like, so like your peak productivity is like 15 minutes. I mean, it's probably different for everybody, but like generally like the average person doesn't reach like their peak performance until like 15 minutes. So it's like I always try to like take care of like all the random things within the first 15 minutes to allow myself to kind of get like to where I need to be and like kind of throw on some music. But I found that like just making sure that like I have some time blocked off, because if it wasn't, then I'd be finding myself like, no, I don't really want to do that right now. Put it off to later. And then it just adds to my schedule. And then I have like days that are completely swamped and then days that I kind of like slacked off. So my thing is just to try to find that even balance where I'm putting in like the same amount of work each day. And it's just kind of like everything kind of flows versus having like days where it's like, you know what I mean? I'm doing nothing. Then there's days where I have to do everything. And it's just kind of looking like a, you know what I mean? Like a wave.
Yeah.
So that was my big thing, is just trying to find ways to kind of increase that, and just because like making the most of the days, I guess, and just trying to like prioritize the things that need to get done was kind of like that's what my focus is now, just trying to like manage my time better.
Yeah, that's key.
Yeah. So in terms of the future, let's move into some future things. So in terms of the future, do you kind of like, do you have like a set limit on the clients that you take in terms of like the number, and like in terms of like expanding, like are you always looking to expand your clients? Like if somebody were to kind of approach you about it, is there like a capacity that you kind of have in terms of like, I only have so much time, therefore I can only deal with so many clients. So I can't really take on clients until somebody drops off. Or is it kind of just like anybody who's willing to sign up as long as they meet like whatever the criteria is for your coaching? Do you kind of just make time for them?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Like, I think the whole number thing, I think that's very much, I know when I first started out, like online coach, and even now you get people asking all the time, like how many clients do you have? Like how many clients? I think it's like, like in the grand scheme of things, it's completely irrelevant, because you know, what matters is obviously how much time each of those clients takes up of you, sort of thing. So it's obviously a contest prep client is in the final few weeks of their prep is going to probably be equivalent to like 10 clients in terms of the amount of attention they need. And then obviously, you know, how much that client's paying you as well. You know, if you're a client paying you like, I don't know, 10 times the price of what a normal client would pay you, then obviously it's you know, their value to your business is obviously 10 times what a normal client is. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of, I think, yeah, that's I think that's a really important thing to take note of, especially if you are like a coach or looking to coach something. But then yeah, I think like in general, I don't really have like a cap of clients. I don't have like a specific number, but obviously if like I find out like, oh, you know, certain times of the year when I'm like really busy, or potentially, you know, if there's a lot going on otherwise, like if I've got some shows coming up and I'm competing, or if I'm, you know, going on holiday, or if something's happening, do you know what I mean? I kind of like do it intuitively. So, you know, if I feel there's a point where I'm getting a bit swamped and I've got like too much going on, then I would rather like cap it just so I can give my current clients like, you know, yeah. But then, you know, quite often what will happen is I'll just kind of stop advertising it, you know, at all. And then obviously that naturally just means that less people start to come in. And then obviously if anyone does come in, I'll just kind of see who they are, see how much time they require. And then obviously if it's someone who's like looking, you know, because generally people that are coming in don't generally require like that much time. I think it's more like kind of, you know, contest prep and stuff like that, or people that are kind of like, you know, almost like high ticket clients that are looking for like more attention, which you almost have to like go and find anyway, because they're not really going to naturally come in. So yeah, I think that's my general approach to it. Like I don't have like a set limit or whatever. Like generally, you know, like at the minute, obviously with the whole coronavirus thing, like I've got, you know, spaces available and stuff. So, you know, and it's like, you know, there might be times like near Christmas and, you know, peak of the summer, like I can imagine like once all this is over, there's going to be like a massive influx in like people wanting coaching. So, you know, they might get to a point there where I'm like, you know, like that's enough. But generally I try and, you know, take on anyone that I want to work with, if that makes sense.
So do you have any plans of like expanding your business in terms of like hiring people, or kind of like creating a physical location, or just having like, I guess not necessarily opening up a gym, but like having like a studio where you could kind of like, if you wanted to infuse like your personal training clients with your online coaching, is there an idea that you kind of, is there any idea of kind of like expanding your business?
I've you know, there's various things, or various like things that I've thought of, and various things that I've got like, you know, put to the side that I'm kind of planning on doing almost. But I don't like I've never really been a big fan of the whole like physical, like getting obviously everyone would love to own a gym, and I would love to own my own like cool gym. But I mean, like, especially the gym that I train at the moment, like, it's probably like one of the best gyms in like Europe. So it's like, there's no way, like, even if I owned my own gym, I'd probably still train at like Ultraflex where I train at the moment, just because it's so good. So that whole like owning your own gym has never really been like, I was like, it's not really been something that I've ever gone towards, if that makes sense. So I don't think I'll ever like own my own facility or anything like that. I think, if I do expand, it will be a case of, building up just like my kind of credibility and building up my client base over a period of time, and then potentially like bringing on an apprentice sort of thing, and kind of going down that route and kind of, be 100% online. And like kind of have 100% online business. But yeah, that's the whole thing, like obviously personal training and stuff as well, is that, even like that route is almost like a separate business together. So, obviously going down the personal training route and then having personal trainers like underneath you sort of thing. So then you're getting an income from personal training, but not actually personal training yourself. So that's, that's potentially something that I would look at going down. But yeah, I think generally it's just, just expand and just grow and just kind of keep up what I'm doing at the minute. And like more of my focus really is kind of on like long term. So I know that if I invest in myself and kind of grow as a bodybuilder, and kind of prioritize that in the long term, that will be something which will grow my business anyway.
So in terms of like doing like clothing lines or supplements, or do you see yourself kind of going towards that, if like kind of looking for things to kind of start up, or are you just kind of happy with like progressing in bodybuilding and then just letting your coaching business speak for itself?
Yeah, no, I think if I like my like expanding of my business going forward will be like purely through like coaching. So it will be in different aspects of coaching. So, it might be like bringing on some more coaches to help me coach like general population clients at like a cheap price, for example, because I'll be able to, because it will be like I have people underneath me. Or it might be a case of obviously teaching other coaches how to start coaching. I think it will always be through that like educational content, because I quite like that kind of like space, the whole education space and the whole teaching space. I quite like enjoy that, especially online. Yeah, like, I don't think like the whole like, as soon as you kind of go into, like, obviously I have like clothing and stuff for like my team, but it's not something that I make money off really. It's just something that, it's just kind of like, something that's nice for the clients to wear, like some team clothing. It's also a bit of advertisement. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, that's something that I like to do, not to make money off. And I don't think I would ever go into that sort of side of things. I think that again is a completely different sort of business. It's like, clothes and supplements and all that sort of thing. So, I don't know enough about all that sort of stuff to really go into business sort of. So I've always been kind of like, I only kind of invest money and stuff into things that I know, rather than just like,
just kind of doing it to do it. You kind of want to like, I find a lot of people just do it because they see other people doing it. And they're like,
there's money in that, so I'm gonna try do that. But it's like,
they're just looking for any way possible that, you know what I mean, to kind of like, they're looking for the next thing to do, I guess, right? And then you see all these like clothing companies, and now everyone's like starting supplements, and it's just kind of like the thing to do, I guess, versus like whether or not it's right for you, or if it's something that you should actually be doing. And I mean, like you said, it costs a lot of money. Like, people throw so much money into like testing out clothes and like having to find the right like people that are serious about it. I know a couple people that have tried to do it, and they're always sending them back because they're not good enough, and like they spend so much money just actually developing the product. And then obviously you have to like sell it. So like it's a lot of money that you're forking out right off the bat. You know what I mean? With very little return on investment. And
well, that's the positive thing with with any sort of education or like coaching service, that there's not usually any real upfront investment. So it's like you haven't really got anything to risk. Do you know what I mean? That's kind of, the only thing that you're investing and risking is your time. Which obviously if you're like either not earning much money, or you're doing something you don't like, and in your spare time you're just watching Netflix, like that time is almost worth nothing anyway, because you've just been spending it on the TV, or like on your PlayStation or something. So I think realistically, like it's a kind of win-win situation if you're looking to kind of like go down this kind of different route. Then
So in terms, let's move now into the bodybuilding style question. So in terms of like in terms of like competing, when did you when did you find out that like, did you like compete? When did you find out like competing, you were interested in competing to begin with? Like, how did that go? Was it like something that you found out through friends, or was it something that you just kind of like seen a lot on and then just kind of decided that it'd be something that you would be interested in, or how did that kind of work with the competing side?
So it's kind of interesting, really. It makes me feel like quite old, like actor in this, because when I first started going to the gym and training, like I did so because I wanted to build muscle. Do you know what I mean? I look at like Arnold and stuff like that, and like Rambo and all these like TV people, like most people, like probably most people, like like our sort of age and stuff probably did, and like you see them on TV and you grow up and you're like, oh, I want to be like muscly and like that. So that's kind of where I started going to the gym. So it was to bodybuild because I wanted to get like looking like a bodybuilder. But I wasn't aware that competing was a thing. Like as far as I knew, it was just an American thing. Obviously being from the UK, like I was like back when younger, like it just seemed like something that never happened or whatever. So as I did that for years, I think up until I don't know the first time I found out that competing was even a thing in the UK, it was probably when I was like 21, 22. It was literally the year. It was the start of the year before I competed. So I think I competed the first time when I was like 22 or something. It was in like 2016. I was either 21 or 22. And I basically did my first show in September, and I found out that competing was a thing in like the January of that year. So until then, I didn't even know, I was never on social media. Like I didn't even have a Facebook or an Instagram. I was never like that sort of person growing up. So like, I used to be like all against like social media. I was like, it's just like rubbish. So, I was like, I didn't even know it existed. And then I found out from a guy at the gym who I was friends with, and he was like, oh yeah, like I competed, they do shows in the UK. So I kind of was like, wow, like that's crazy. Like, and then he was saying, you should do it. You look real good and stuff like that. So I was like, looked into it. I like looked at, the competition and stuff and who was winning the shows. And then I was like, oh, I could like beat those people. I think like, I could definitely, I definitely could like stand a chance against them. So that's when I decided to like do my first show. And I was like, I think it was like I think I went to a Body Power in the UK, which is a big fitness expo. And it was like after I came back from that, I was like, yeah, I'm definitely going to compete. And I think that was probably like May time. And then I kind of started prep and competed for the first time in September that year.
So how many times have you competed in total in terms of how many shows have you done?
So I competed, I don't know, I competed once in 2016, which was like my first show. I came third in like a regional show. And then the following year, I think I did like 6 shows, I think. So I did 6 shows, and I think I won like 4 of them, I think. So I did 2 shows at the beginning of the year, one in London. I did 2 back-to-back shows. So one was in London, and then one was kind of in another city, and they were kind of on the Saturday and the Sunday. So I basically traveled up to London because I was, quite far away, a couple hours away from there. I did a show there, and then like that night came back, literally slept like 2 hours, and then went to this other show the next day and ended up like winning both of those, which qualified me for like the British finals and then the Arnold Classic. And then I think I did an amateur like Olympia show, which obviously this is all for like the IFBB Pro League. But back then it was, so it was all like untested shows in like men's physique. Did like an amateur Olympia in Spain, which is like my first like international show. Got absolutely smashed because I was competing against I was still a junior at the time, like a young junior. Went into like men's physique, like open, got absolutely battered. But obviously again, it was a good experience. And then like later on that year, I kind of like really got my shit together and did the Arnold Classic, which is one I ended up winning. And then I did the British finals, I think like 2 months after. So I think it was 5 shows that year. And then last year, so I can kind of competed 3 years in a row, like 2016, 2017, then 2018, the year before last. Then I did a show in the UK. I did a show in Las Vegas when I was over there, because obviously I went over there for the summer. And then I did a show in India as well, because I spent some time in India last year. And then obviously last year was my off season, and then this year I'm going to go again, hopefully.
Yeah, after all this is resolved. So in terms of like the first show that you did when you placed third to like winning a show, I guess like looking back now, what was the biggest thing that you learned from like doing your first show to like something that you've kind of tried to get better with, or something that you've like kind of like said, oh, well, I should be doing a better job at this? Or what was something that kind of like changed your mindset, your perspective of like being able to do what you did and kind of get from doing your first show to kind of like competing to where you are now?
I think like my first show was very much a case of just like, obviously I'd never done it before. They're like very limited in terms of my knowledge and stuff on actual contest prep. Like obviously I knew how like the science behind like calories and training and all that sort of stuff. So, but realistically, I got in shape. I did come in like, pretty well conditioned. But I got in shape just by working hard, really. Like I just did more. Like if I wasn't losing weight, I'd just do more. I'd just train more, train harder. I'd just do more cardio.
Yeah.
And it was just, a case of just doing more and more and more and more. Obviously, it ended up feeling absolutely just destroyed. And yeah, like I think even with my diet, like I was having like cheat days and stuff like that, days where I'd have like 10,000 calories and stuff like that. I think like the week before my show, I was like, yeah, I'm going to carb up, and had like a pizza and like some cake and just, do you know what I mean? I don't know. I think my attitude was a bit different, because back then it was just like, it wasn't really something I was serious about. It was just something I was trying out. So I was like, the worst that happens is that I won't look as good as what I can do. And I already thought at the time, because I'd never even looked like that lean before, sort of thing. So I was kind of like very much like, oh, I don't care. Like, I just I want to win, but obviously, like, it's all like a learning experience, sort of thing. So I was very much like, yeah, just kind of like winged it sort of thing for my first show. And then obviously after coming third, like I'm a very competitive person, so I absolutely hated it. Like I was like really pissed off. Like most people, I think most people that go through a prep and they don't win the show, they're going to be a bit, especially if you're really like highly competitive, you're going to be a bit like upset.
Sure.
And I was just like, well, I think there's either two things that you can go, like two routes you can go down. Like if that happens, is you can either just decide not to compete again and be like, oh, this is rubbish, like I don't want to do it again, or you can like come back and be like 100 times better. And I just kind of did that, just came back, like, spent, I think it was like, I had like a 4 or 5 month off season, which was like, I spent like really going at it, like trying to optimize everything. And then obviously the next prep was obviously a lot better as well. Like there was no like cheating on my diet and having cheat days and stuff. It was very much like structured, and yeah.
In terms of your prep area, in terms of your contest now, which show were you? I think I watched your YouTube channel in terms of it. Watched some of your videos on that. But in terms of like your shows, like obviously like with everything that's going on now, it kind of got pushed, I would imagine. But in terms of like your prep, like when are you just kind of in like a bulking stage where you're kind of still prepping, or when are you kind of looking to do your next show with everything kind of like up in the air? Or what do you kind of like, how did your plans change, I guess, or just kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, so like initially my plan was to take, obviously the last time I competed was in October 2018. So since then I've been in off season. So like whole of last year, like obviously end of 2018, and then like since then I've been kind of in an off season. And then the plan was to kind of start prep at the very beginning of this year, and do some qualifiers in like July, August time. Do some qualifiers then, and then obviously do the finals and try and get through to worlds and stuff like that in September, October time, with like the kind of tested federations in the UK, which is like the UK FBA under the WMBF and the BMBF. So it's like, that was my plan. So the plan was to be ready by like July, like do like loads and loads of shows through like July, August, September, October, potentially November. But obviously now it's all changed. They've cancelled all the qualifiers. So like what they're doing now is they're doing open finals in September and October, I think. So it's a case of either doing those if they're on, because obviously at the minute it's just a maybe, I guess.
Yeah,
so I think what I'm going to do, because I mean I've been off season for like ages anyway. Like I'm holding like a pretty decent amount of body fat, so I think I'm going to go ahead with prep anyway.
Just make it more of a gradual thing versus trying to have to like, you know what I mean? Make it like a longer prep versus having to, because like with everything kind of up in the air now, you're kind of better off just like, you know what I mean, making it longer and just kind of getting that mindset that you are in prep. Because you don't really know which shows are going to happen. So I think that like if you were to treat it like it was a prep, then when something kind of came up, you know what I mean, you'd be ready, or you'd be kind of like in line to do it, right?
Yeah, so like the idea this year anyway was to do like a much longer prep, like whereas usually I've done preps in like kind of like 16 weeks or whatever, whereas this year I kind of wanted to take like a good 30 plus weeks to like do it slower, like really bring like the best they could possibly bring. So yeah, that was the plan this year, is to have like a good like 30 plus week prep. And that's kind of the approach I'm taking now anyway. Like I was going to spend this year like dieting down, and then either it will be a case of doing the show in September, or come like July, August time, I'll know that the show's been cancelled, and then I'll just go into another off season, compete next year.
So in terms of like your stage weight, do you have kind of an idea of like what you are aiming to get down to, or is it just kind of like more of a feeling and a visual thing, or is it to kind of like match maybe previous shows? Like what kind of target you got in terms of your stage weight that you kind of want to?
Yeah, so I know my like last stage weight, because obviously 2018, I was kind of hovering around between like 172 to 175 pounds.
Yeah.
Obviously, yeah, that's going to essentially be like 2 years ago when it comes to competing again, at least. So my cutoff for middleweights in the tested federations here is 176 pounds. So it's basically the same weight as I was back then. So the idea for me is to just get under that weight, really. And I know if I get under that weight, especially after the way I've been training, doing stuff the last couple of years, that I'm going to be like absolutely diced at that body weight. So that's the goal.
Yeah.
I know exactly what body weight I've got to get down to actually fit into middleweights. And then it'll be a case of when I get that lean, I'll know kind of how much more I've got to take off.
So in terms of like when you did your last show to where you're going to be doing your next show now, is there anything that you are particularly like focusing on more, or is it just more of just like doing more of the same things?
I don't know. Like obviously, prior to like this year, I've done like my main shows were men's physique. So I used to compete in men's physique a lot in like the IFBB Pro League and stuff like that. And then I did competed in classic physique last year. But obviously being an untested federation and stuff, is like realistically, like I know that unless I go down the enhanced route, there's no way that I'm going to be able to be like competitive at the higher level of those amateur shows. So yeah, obviously this year I was like, well, I kind of wanted to do a tested show, like one of the actual natural bodybuilding shows in 2018, but they're all like over by the time I got back to the UK. So like this year, like I've like dedicated, like I want to go down that natural bodybuilding route and obviously get the legs out, and like so it's kind of different in that aspect, where it's like a different category. Obviously it's more emphasis on like bodybuilding as opposed to like the physique style stuff. So yeah, that's the main difference this year.
So in terms of like doing the natural bodybuilding, have you earned your pro card in the natural bodybuilding, or is that
no? I've never competed. So I've never actually competed, because that's the main reason that kind of I quite wanted to compete this year in like a tested bodybuilding show, because I've never actually competed in a tested show before. So although obviously I'm like a natural bodybuilder, I've never actually done anything to prove that that's the case, because all the shows that I've done have been with the IFBB Pro League, which is obviously an untested federation. So yeah, so like it's a whole like new field for me, if that makes sense. But obviously my goal would be to get my natural pro card, because I think that's kind of like the end goal as an amateur. Obviously, is like I think I'm kind of I've competed enough times to like almost like it doesn't bother me like winning a qualifier, if that makes sense, because I think like they're small shows. Like once you've done something like that like a few times, it's almost like you've done it. So for me now, it'd be a case of like either like winning like a British title, winning like a pro card in something, and that's kind of like the mindset that I've got, and that's kind of what I'm aiming for.
Winning that pro card, let's say like you won your pro card next year, or whenever you got your pro card in the next couple of years, what are your plans for after you do that in terms of like competing in shows? Like, do you have anything in mind that, like, let's say you had your pro card right now, what would change from the way you're competing now to like when you've got that pro card?
It depends. Like, because this year again was for me, it was very much looking into, and I said it like various times on my social media and stuff. Like, it's very much looking at whether to continue going down the natural route or to go into the like enhanced route. Obviously like 25 going on like 26. So it's kind of like I'm at that point now where like I think it's I've been training for 10 years. So I think like I'm at that point now where if I did decide to go down the enhanced route, like it would be, I've done everything in my kind of like power to get in the best position, the smartest possible position, to go down that route. But like the last thing on my like tick list was to like kind of compete in a natural bodybuilding federation and kind of have a look down that route and see if I actually prefer competing in that kind of area, because it might be a case that I compete in the natural bodybuilding federation, decide that I actually enjoy that like more. and then decide to obviously continue going down that route. So it's kind of, for me, it's kind of a big year in regards to like making choices like that, like what route to go down.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the turning point in terms of like, are you enjoying competing as a natural? Is it something you can continue pursuing? And I guess the satisfaction too, because it's like after you're in your pro card and in the natural bodybuilding, you're just kind of competing for the love of it. And I mean, like you got that goal to strive for, where it's like there's only like the shows that you can do to get that pro card, and then once you get it, I don't really know like what would be next in terms of like, you know what I mean? You could win bigger shows, I guess, and that would be kind of like more internal motivation to kind of like want to do it. But I think that like you said, it's kind of like frustrating as a natural to kind of like once you kind of like reach that limit, or you think you're at a point where it's like going to the gym is just kind of like to maintain, do you know what I mean? And you're very limited to like how much you can actually improve. And like that leads to like longer off seasons and like more time in between shows. So it's like, I think you have to determine like whether or not, like if you're going to take it to the next level, like if it's something you really want to make sure that you're excelling at, like you're able to kind of like get into more of like the Olympia style stuff, like what your goals are in terms of like if you choose to enhance, I guess. So it's like in terms of enhancing, would that be something you're interested in? Is just kind of like doing like the bigger shows, like doing like the Arnold class, like trying to get yourself there, or like the Olympia? Is that something that you've thought about as a goal for you?
Yeah, so it would be, it would be a case of like at the moment, like my goal is to obviously go down the natural route. I like, the goal would be to get like a WMBF pro, like a natural pro card. And then from there, I'll decide like what route to take. Obviously, again, like if that happened, or if, even if that doesn't happen, but I enjoy the process a lot, and I'm like, I'm very close, and it'll be worth doing it again, maybe next year to try and do it. Then I'll do that. But I think, yeah, obviously, like I'm very much like an all-in 100% person, obviously, like we're in bodybuilding. So I think it will be a case of like, if I do decide to go down the enhanced route, it will be like I will chase to go to the Olympia, chase to go to the Arnold Classic. Like, it will be, it won't be necessarily a case of just getting a pro card, but I want to be like a competitive pro, if that makes sense. Because I don't see the point in, like, I don't see the point in getting a pro card and then not using your pro card. I mean, there's tons of people that do that, and they just get the pro card to stick on their, their Instagram, like I'm an IFBB pro or whatever, won some small show, like, yeah, fair play. But like, I think if you don't use that pro card, you're not really, you're not really a pro. You're just kind of someone that's just using the title.
I think you have to, like, when you get it, I think you have to compete. I think they give you a year to compete.
Yeah.
Again. So it's like as soon as you win your pro card, it's like you have to, in order to maintain the pro card, you have to compete, like, I forget what it is, but I think it's like
once every 3 years or something.
Yeah, it's like when you first get it, I think you have to compete the following year.
Fair enough.
Or you have like a year to compete because you have to make your pro debut or
Right.
whatever, right? And after you do that, it's like, I'm not sure exactly, like it could be 3 years, but like I think there are like certain things that like you almost need to make sure that you're doing in order to hold on to that.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I wonder how that transition would go from like if you were like a natural pro bodybuilder and then you decided to go the enhanced route, and then like so you won your pro card as a natural. And then obviously once you started, I wonder if like if you started using, I wonder if like you would get that revoked.
Yeah, I'm sure you would. But I think, I don't know, like it's not really like, for me, it's not like about like titles and stuff. Like it's not really like about the pro card, if that makes sense. It's more about like the process of getting the pro card and like having achieved it. So it's like, I think, whether you actually still have a pro card or whether you've just achieved it in the past, I think it's more of a stepping stone for me, like getting a natural pro card. It's not like the end goal, if that makes sense. Same with like if I went enhanced and then obviously got an IFBB pro card, it wouldn't be like the end goal. It would be like a stepping stone to becoming a competitive pro and then getting to the Olympia. So
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So I think that's pretty much all that I have in terms of, there are just some final questions that I kind of want to go over. So in terms of like, what would be your biggest piece of advice for somebody? So let's start off with the online coaching. What would be your biggest piece of advice for somebody who's looking to become an online coach, who maybe has obviously interested in natural bodybuilding, but like doing bodybuilding, in terms of starting up their business? Like, what would be your biggest piece of advice from getting to like where you are now, or something that you would give them in terms of that?
I think the best bit of advice is just like start, like just do something, because I think a lot of people will like want to be an online coach, or they want to be a competitive bodybuilder, and they've wanted to be that for the last like 3 years, but they're yet to actually like put their foot down and and done something to make it happen. So I think, yeah, like, you know, whether you want to, like, regardless of what you want to do, let's like actually do something, like whether it be, you know, like investing in some sort of course, whether it be like making sure that you're listening to like podcasts which are about it sort of thing and educating yourself for so many hours each week, whether it be like just bringing on and trying to work with some like free clients or something, like actually just do something to start, because you know if you don't do that, you're never going to get anywhere. So I think that's probably the main thing. It's just like invest and just start doing something.
And I think the biggest excuse that people use is like they don't have the time to do it. And I think that like you actually sit down and like reevaluate like what you're doing and like where your time's getting spent. Like back to what you said, like you might be spending that 3 hours watching Netflix, right? Like, is that really a priority? And it's like, if it's more of a priority than starting up an online coaching business, then like obviously maybe you're not ready to do it. So I think
and I think again as well, it's like obviously a lot of people, like I think a lot of people think that there's some sort of like perfect balance between all these things, but it's like I think you need to understand you can't do and be everything. Do you know what I mean? It's like if you want to, let's say, start up a business, whether it be online coaching or anything else, something's going to take a hit somewhere. It might be your social life, like it might be time that you spend with your family. It might be your bodybuilding, your gym. It might be your another business or your work or something. You might have to work less, earn like less income to have that time to put into your business. Like you're gonna have to take that time from somewhere. It's like if you don't have the time, then you have to make it somehow. So it's never an excuse you don't have the time. You've just got to be proactive and just create that time from something.
Yeah, awesome. So I think that's going to do it for the podcast. I definitely like to thank you for all your input and everything that you for making time as well. I know everybody's kind of has a little bit more time, but like it's always nice being able to connect with people who are doing kind of like people that I look up to. And honestly, I can say that I do look up to you because like you've done pretty much everything. Well, not say that you've done, but like you share similar interests and similar goals that like I'm looking to do as well. Who's new to online coaching, who's just kind of, I'm currently working with 2 clients or 3 clients right now. I had 3, but 1 dropped off. So it's like, so as someone who's looking to expand my business and someone who's also trying to do the natural route, like I competed once in natural, or it wasn't natural bodybuilding, but it was in an untested show. So it was my very first show, which was back in April. So it was April 2019, which was my first show. So I basically did it for the same reasons to why you did it. I just wanted to make sure that I was interested in it. And then after I did it, I was like, you know what? I love this. I love the process. I love everything. So I've been basically like I was working with a coach while I was doing it. And then after working with him, I said, you know what? I think it would be awesome to do coaching and to do all that. So that's when I, like you said, took action and decided to kind of get everything all going, took a course on it and basically just said, you know what? I'm going to put all my time and energy into this and just try to make the best out of it. And just in terms of competing, I was going to be doing a show. I wanted to compete again in 2021 was my goal. So I'm just kind of like figuring out which show I'm going to be doing. But like I'm still on board with the natural. So I want to do a completely tested all natural show. So I was really interested with getting you on since you are doing. That's kind of why I was so interested with the content and the stuff that you put out, because it's very inspiring for me to see somebody who is doing the exact same thing that basically like I want to do, or the things that like interest me.
I think that's a good thing as well, is obviously the fact that like, what a lot of people do is that they kind of look and watch people's content and consume content and stuff and like try and interact with people that are like way beyond what they're doing. Whereas I think like the smartest thing to do is find like people who are like just in front of like maybe just done what you've done, or are kind of doing what you're like aiming to do in the near future, and kind of interact with those people and like been speaking sort of thing. I think that's the best thing to do.
Yeah. And I think that like being able to deliver value to people with this podcast, I think there's a lot of people that want to do that as well. Right. And I think a lot of people not necessarily don't know where to start, but maybe they start the wrong way, or they just don't know what steps to take. And I think that like going back to what you said with your podcast, I think it's really great that you have your own podcast where you kind of share your story, or share your stories and share kind of like where you are, while bringing guests on who like share similar experiences or have like topics that you're discussing in terms of like coaching or like just general discussion. I think that's really great to be able to like put out free information, because there's a lot of bad information out there. And I think that like in terms of like being able to put out quality information, people are definitely going to take to that well. So yeah, so that's going to do it. I think, like I said, I'd like to thank you for your time, and Don't forget to be inspiring, stay motivated, and continue to push your limits.